And even if our position there's different opinions.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our select board meeting, September 26th. We have a very full agenda tonight. We have community input. We have appointments and resignations, capital plan presentation, TBA Architects Police Department conceptual design proposal, fall town meeting warrant article recommendations, police mutual aid memorandum of understanding approval, acceptance of donation to the police. Pretty police heavy tonight, I'd say. Committee and employee appointment policies, town administrator report. We're going to review our minutes and warrants, liaison reports, cemetery deeds, and again, we'll close with community input. We are going, we always start with community input. Is there anybody here or on Zoom who has something they would like to say?
I do.
Okay, so hang. Who was that? I can't see the screen, so can you identify yourself? Oh, Maureen Deary. Maureen, identify yourself, please.
Oh, Maureen Cosgrove Dairy, 575 South Street. I read online the warrant article for an appointed town clerk, and it said that you would, if it passed, that it would go on the 2024 ballot. Would that mean it goes on the 2024 ballot at the same time people will be going in and voted on the elected position?
Yes, that's correct.
So if I go in and I want to vote for someone for town clerk, and then I hypothetically went over to vote because I think it's a good idea to have an appointed person, then what happens to the person I voted for town clerk? Do they just not have the job after they run for it?
That depends on the ballot question, because that may or may not.
Right, if the ballot question goes through and I voted for somebody for town clerk, does the person who wins for town clerk only get it for like 3 or 4 weeks until you open up the position for people to apply?
Let Ryan answer that.
That question was asked by the board. We did speak to council about it. So the person who wins the election, as soon as the election is certified and the position becomes appointed, would then be subject to the appointment process. So the select board would then decide how to fill that position, like they would any other appointed position.
So it's potentially someone could take the time to run and only be on it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Wouldn't it make sense to make it so that the appointment doesn't take place till after 2027 when you've gone through the cycle?
We're not really responding.
Yeah. Well, we'll certainly mark that question down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for community input?
Not me.
John?
No, not me. I thought you were looking at me, so I said, no, not me.
Okay, John?
Everything's okay.
All right. Well, then, in that case, let's go directly to our appointments because we have a very important one. Well, I know, but two very important. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. You have to be careful. So.
I don't see a motion in here.
I don't either. Ryan, why don't you take it away for us?
Correct, because read it after. So the motion would be to appoint Dean Barbera as a full-time police officer and to appoint Athena as our police canine officer.
Okay. So I'm going to call Chief Amendola forward, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, for the appointment of Officer Dean Barbera, Dean has been working as a Northeastern police officer for a short period of time. He put in for the full-time position and passed all the processing and background, so he's all set for that. I can do Athena now, or I can wait till.
Why don't we do one at a time? I'll make the motion.
All right.
I move that we appoint Dean J. Barbera as a full-time police officer,
Second.
subject to all negotiations.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? You have anything else you wanted to add, Chief? No?
I
That's
don't
fine.
have anything for him just yet.
Okay.
There will be some in the future.
Great. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That was unanimous. Thank you.
So again, another exciting thing to share with the police department. We do have Canine Athena, who's joined us tonight with her handler. So Canine Athena has been working behind the scenes with her new handler, Eric Kukos. Athena has slowly made her appearances out in the community, saying hi to just about everyone she sees. Whether it's a tail wag or a paw, she definitely is excited to be a part of Carlisle. Officer Kukos has started his basic training with Athena and will go through a stepped program of obedience with her over the next few months to certify her as a community resource dog. Aside from me catching her sleeping on the job today, I think she has done well so far. It is with great pleasure, if she's appointed, that I welcome Athena officially to the Carlisle Police Department.
And what is she officially going to be, a canine officer, or
So she will be,
what's her title?
Canine Athena.
Canine Athena? We'd be appointing her as Canine Athena?
Correct.
Okay, because go
I think
for it,
we need
Nathan.
to see Canine Athena though,
I
don't
do
you?
think we need to have her presented.
Person interviewing.
She's not shy.
Yeah, come on up. At least so those on Zoom can also
Yes.
see her.
Can we, yeah, get,
Can we get
Got
the
it.
camera?
there we go. Whoops.
Get the live stream.
Who's got the got it button?
That would be Officer McLean.
It's back here.
Chief
Really?
Amendola. In dog years, is she old enough?
She is. Just barely.
How old is she?
She's 14 weeks now.
14 weeks. Oh my God, she's still a baby. Yeah, she is so cute. All
So
right, so do we,
I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Canine Athena to the Carlisle Police Force.
Second.
she is. Look at her.
Whatever treat you have or about to have.
Yeah. All right, any questions, comments, further discussion?
Athena, what do you think so far? How is it being here?
No, she's paying attention to the,
Right.
that's good. She's focused.
It's focused, that's right. Goal oriented.
Yes, yes. And those are probably high value treats. All right, all those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So
Okay,
the meeting is 10 minutes old and it's all downhill from here.
Yes. Does she get pinned?
Yeah, so I'm gonna just read something about Officer Kylie. I'm gonna have her come up and join. Canine Athena, please. I know it's tough being the follow-up act to Officer Kylie attended the Worcester Police Academy in March of 2023, where she excelled near the top of her class in physical fitness, firearms training, and academics, and obtained the Police Academy Director's Award. Anyone who has attended a police academy can tell you that is no easy feat. Officer Denise Kylie began working for the Carlisle Police Department as a part-time officer in June of 2023. Officer Kylie made a tremendous impact during her field training officer period, getting outstanding reviews from her field training officer and other officers she worked with. Officer Kylie is multilingual in English, Spanish, and Italian. As a part-time officer, I received excellent reviews about her handling calls and how she is a caring and engaging police officer from some community members. So ultimately, when she decided to put in for the full-time position, she had already had a stellar reputation. It should be noted that I was informed that as a full-time officer, Officer Kylie has already made Carlisle history this past weekend, where her and Sergeant Baxter were the first two full-time female police officers to work a shift together.
Hmm.
Officer Kylie will have her badge penned by her husband, Brian. Brian, if you want to come up, and Athena here is going to have her badge penned by her new partner, canine handler Eric Kukos.
Yeah, get one for the mosquito.
Yeah. Oh. She doesn't like it.
She thought it was a treat.
Oh. Very cute.
You want to have a speech?
Officer Kukos, how many of those little canine jackets you think you have to go through by the time she?
Couple, you just said I the chief forced her to wear it. No,
It's true.
Thank you to the town, thank you to the members of the board.
Yeah.
Playing everyone, chief. Yeah, we're very, very, very excited. Thank you for the support. This is gonna be a great addition to the town. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, now wipe those smiles off your faces. We got work to do.
Almost made it without an accident. so-
Oh, well, you know, every 2 hours at that age. It's-
Thank you both.
Thank you, guys.
Little calling cards. Yeah.
Okay. Community appointments. Do we have any?
We have none, Madam Chair. We have one resignation.
Counselor, yes.
Want me to move the resignation?
I don't like having to scroll. this thing. All right,
Would you like me to make the
please.
motion? Okay. I'm, I move that the select board accepts the resignation of Preston L. Holloman from the Carlisle Cultural Council effective immediately with our thanks.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right. Capital plan presentation. Ryan. Oh, Finance Committee, do you want to open your meeting?
I think you need to.
Want to talk?
Lynn, you have Victor's online too.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
I'm good. I'd like to open the meeting for the FinCom and do a roll call, please. If we could start with people on the phone.
Liang here.
Schoberg here.
Tapio here. Are you here? Wheelman here.
Lipinski here.
Bernstein here.
We've got everybody. Okay, we're ready.
Okay.
All right, I'll get us started and keep us on track. The presentation is sort of a whole unit, but of course I'll stop at any point and answer questions. So briefly to introduce this is a capital planning model. So it's a tool that will turn into a capital plan as we move through this budget process. So what that means is it is a representation or a model of what could be done with capital planning, and it does incorporate a lot of the items that departments have asked for and some of the projections that the board has been looking for. However, it is a model, not the model. The capital plan will be created again as we move through the capital planning process. It includes projected capital expenses, a modeled funding plan with variable budget options. It considers our reserves and debt, and then also touches on future capital considerations to include some of the large items discussed by the select board. Some overall assumptions to know as we're moving through this. It does assume that the operating budget is limited to 3% growth annually. This could change and is probably the biggest variable on this slide for sure. It does also maintain a 12% reserve, or models a 12% reserve. It maintains our debt level at 3 to 5%, or provides recommendations to keep it at that level. It doesn't include a detailed inflation escalator, although there is a contingency line in it that does serve as a way to adjust for variation. And that contingency includes inflation, unknown costs, and unknown projects.
So it's like a line item?
Yes. And I'll show it to you. So the capital expense part, this is the part that most people in town are familiar with. This is what shows up in the warrant articles for each year for capital items and capital planning. It is the line item capital plan. So departments were asked to project their capital costs for the next 5 years, including items over 5,000 not in their annual operating expenses. And we didn't really have any $5,000 items. It was mostly 10,000 and more. Departments will refine their requests with the select board and the FinCom as they move through the budget process. So some of these are strong estimates, but they do need to be refined and vetted as we go for funding. And then the model will be updated annually following the budget process, and will include your actual modeling variables to make sure we're tracking the small decisions in the big picture. These are everyone's favorite slides, and they're impossible to read, but this is the expenses detailed by department. So this includes a lot of items that were known this year in the budget process, plus any items that departments felt were important to include in their 5-year plan. I would put my confidence in this list at about 90% in terms of cost estimates and what's been captured. However, the more committed you are to the capital process, the more accurate it'll become as departments buy into the model and the idea that they need to be on the plan in order to receive recommendation for funding.
This came, Ryan, from conversations with specific departments?
Yes.
Oh.
So each department was given a chance to submit. We do have some new department heads that are working through what they're going to need for capital, specifically the DPW, the police department. So while these are 90% solutions, we are going to have to work on them. There's a couple of big items not included in here, and that's part of the MFC's planning process. They are captured in some ways, but if there was to be, say, a large DPW renovation or other big projects, those are not included in this model currently, but that is touched upon at the end of the presentation.
Ryan, just a quick question.
Sure.
I noticed the 300,000 road maintenance. Is that over what we would get for Chapter 90, or does Chapter 90 come out of that after this?
It's a good question. So Chapter 90 has been at right around 250,000 a year for a while now. That's $200 million in the governor's bond bill. 50,000 of that comes from the operating budget. It's built into the operating budget for road maintenance. So we're estimating at about 300,000. You will get a presentation in the next month or two from one of our house doctors that demonstrates that $300,000 a year is not enough to keep our road surfaces the way they are right now. So that'll be an important decision that's, again, captured at the end of this presentation. So the last line in here is a contingency of 10%. So we added 10% cost to this model. You could change that number. It could be 20%. It could be 5%. It could not be in there at all. And that would, of course, impact the total numbers. This is just another way to view it. This is by department. So totals by department. So that's the expense side. I want to touch on a funding model, a best practice recommendation based on your current policies and what I believe is your current thinking, having gone through one budget process with you. However, this model could be different depending on the priorities and other decisions that the Finance Committee and the Select Board makes. This is a model to start from. So it uses one-time funds for capital projects whenever possible, meaning we don't fund one-time things with operating costs that continue annually unless that's already captured in the operating budget. We use debt capacity for larger projects, and ideally you would separate those out in the town meeting warrant in order to make those big decisions, individual decisions, rather than just in the capital plan. But it does get captured in capital planning. The model is based on your policies that we've been working through that shape the operating budget and guide revenue projections. And the funding sources as identified here are free cash, debt, chapter 90, existing funds, like those approved for projects by the MFC, and then other sources. So you have an ambulance reserve fund, grants, state funds, and ARPA is still lingering there. One thing to note is debt is captured as an annual cost in the operating budget. So that is something that is included in this model and then also in the operating budget side.
CPA funds don't, are not, affecting this?
It can.
Okay.
So it has to qualify. Many
Right.
of these capital items do not. However, there is,
The
to
recreation.
say this name, because
pickleball.
I hear that pickleball is a thing here, but there, that could be captured by recreational costs in CPC. So there are other ways, other funds that you could add to this capital plan to reduce deficits and other costs.
I have another question, if I may. So in the 5-year projections, how accurate do we think we can be with the high school capital projections? Are they projecting out 5 years that we can capture those?
It's a known unknown at this point.
Thanks.
So I don't think there's going to be major costs coming anytime soon, but it will have to be part of this larger comprehensive plan. We do need to have a conversation with the regional school about the Ripley building and other items that have sort of been deferred for decisions in this capital plan. And I know there's a lot of feelings on both sides there, but we are going to have a conversation about it.
There is something at the regional, there's the bathrooms and the athletic facilities. You know, there is something out there working.
Known unknown. So this shows potential funding versus expenses. So we're talking about the funding model here. So adhering to operating budget policies, I'm recommending in this presentation that you intentionally produce 500,000 in free cash annually for pay-as-you-go funding. And I'll talk about how that's generated on the next slide. The debt recommendations are extremely conservative. That's on purpose. I think this is Finance Committee and Select Board decisions on how much to get into debt and what levels that should be. But there are recommendations here and strong best practices that will guide you. Chapter 90 funds are pretty fixed. We expected to see a bump with the new governor. We didn't. We got a 2-year commitment to the same. So I think it's fair to say that we're going to get the same for a while. MFC funds are unspent dollars from previous town meeting votes. They are working through that right now as they improve buildings. A lot of those projects are included in this capital plan and could come from those funds until they're exhausted or you approve more for the MFC. And other funds aren't guaranteed, but certainly show up year to year. So this demonstrates a recommended funding strategy, not the plan, but a plan. So it would include that that mix of funding that I talked about. So if you use the mix of funding that is recommended in this plan, the bottom line in bold shows the deficit between what is needed by the departments and what this funding plan could fund. And I'll show you ways to overcome those deficits. There'll be policy decisions. It is not doom and gloom, but it certainly shows that there is more to buy than we have the ability to spend. This could be a confusing slide, so I'll stop if anybody has any questions here. I get into a little more detail. Okay.
So which of those lines is the cost?
It's not shown on that slide
Okay.
because we didn't want to clutter it. The cost comes from here.
Yeah, Nathan, yeah, I went back, by the way, I went back and did all the additions and it all, it all adds up, unfortunately.
Let me take just a crack at explaining. So the chart that has all the specific projects is the current 5-year look at everybody's project list. Now, 2 things are going to happen, right? One is we're going to wire brush that and some things are going to drop off or get deferred, but new things are going to pop up. So for the purpose of this discussion, if you go back to slide 7, Ryan, or somewhere wherever that chart is, I mean, I would take it on faith that that's a reasonable snapshot of the capital needs. Let's just say 2 million a year of things to spend, right? So now you go back to his assumption and you say, all right, let's assume that 2 million a year is like the spend rate, and it may get smoothed out. This is a little lumpy, but I think it's a good approach to say, all right, if we committed to our ability to generate free cash has been pretty good. So, and one of the themes here is I won't say fritter away, but if you use free cash like to patch up operating shortfalls, then you'll never have it as a resource to approach your capital. So what Ryan's advocating is a discipline. Says, okay, I'm gonna, we're gonna reserve that 500,000 as a placeholder annually of the free cash we generate to buy things, right? So that's the first line. Then there are a few projects, as Ryan mentioned, we're pretty, judicious when we decide to go in debt. These are 3 projects that are a little bit more. They would get debt financing, right? I mean, you could put other things or you could even pay those for cash, but at least for now, that's a working model. Then there's Chapter 90, MFC, other sources, blah, blah, blah. And then the bottom line is what's left over if you do that for the things we said we needed. And that's kind of where he's going.
Right. So, and I'll get into how to close this deficit and the debt projections, which are all their own individual variables. So closing that deficit, if you wanted to close a deficit, right? Like that's a policy decision as well. So the current expenses exceed the town's ability to pay based off of your policies and best practice and without that scrubbing that David explained. So it would require you to reduce your expenses. Let me just take out the available revenue. So just reduce expenses, and I'll change this slide because revenue is its own projection and category. You can increase your borrowing capacity, but this will impact your operating budget and make it more difficult to stay within that 3% that is a huge variable in this presentation. You can reduce your town reserves. So best practice is 10 to 12. The town is committed to 12%. I think that's a good practice, but if you wanted to spend more on capital, you could reduce your reserves. You can shift projects from year to year, which is, I think the most understandable. And then you can increase your revenue by increasing taxes, getting grant applications, using CPA funds. I don't know why someone's looking for my phone, but the second thing is the last thing is this presentation is a very conservative plan. So it's intentionally conservative so that the select board and the FinCom can come to their own policy conclusions based on the way the model presents. So free cash generation. So this is something that's important, something that is often not explained in the budget process, but it is an important part of even Department of Revenue best practices. So intentionally generating free cash is important for budget flexibility and also capital plan funding, that pay-as-you-go mechanism, that 500,000 as part of this model. So to generate the free cash necessary, how do you generate it? Typically, you're looking for a 1% turn back from your departments and contingency funds. So I'll show what that looks like. You want to, or that state aid will maintain at least a 1 to 2% level. That's not a given, but typically it does. And then local receipts. So this one is the most policy driven, but we bring in revenue as a town, local receipts. Think of excise tax or building permits or other things that come in. We intentionally project those at about 90% in order to make sure that we don't have a shortfall in the budget. However, if it comes in at 100% of last year's actual, then you would retain that 10% in order to generate free cash. So it gives you a cushion too. If you don't hit your revenue goals, then your budget hasn't sunk, but you wouldn't generate as much free cash. So this is a quick look at that and what that would look like. So at a projected, and this is a 3% increase, $35 million-ish operating budget this year with 3.3 million in variable revenue, that's state aid and local receipts combined, with a 1% turn back and hitting 100% of actual on a 90% projection, you would generate about 686,000 in free cash intentionally for funding this plan. But then you got to consider your reserves. So reserves are an important part of free cash and the ability to maintain funds. So the town has a policy of 12% in the annual operating budget. You have to catch up with this cost in order to maintain that 12%. And I'll demonstrate what happens if you don't. So this model includes an $80,000 catch-up projection to stay at that 12% level, assuming you increase the operating budget at 3% each year. So if you didn't do that catch-up from this year's budget or a reserve of 12.89%, you would fall to 11.12% in 5 years of your 12% target. If you included an 80% increase, you would maintain that 12%. So why does that matter? it matters because you need to use free cash in order to save. So that 686,000 of free cash that you generate intentionally, you would be pulling that 80,000 out of that for available pay-as-you-go funding. So you notice this funding model says $500,000 annually. That gives you 100,000 in flexibility for the other things that pop up. And this is just if you hit all of your intentional generation targets. It's not to say that if we don't hit 500, it's a fail. We could generate 900,000. You could generate 300,000. You just want to be in that window. So debt is also an important consideration, and this is a full slide. So let me walk you through it. If we did nothing to increase the debt capacity, so what's in the operating budget in order to fund current debt, then our debt as a percentage of our operating budget over the next 5 years would drop from 3.75% to 2.18% of the operating budget. The problem with that capacity is once you let it go, it no longer comes back unless you want to add funding to the budget. So we are recommending that you maintain a current level of borrowing in your operating budget to save that capacity for projects that are coming up. And that's what this cumulative, and it'll show it even better in the next slide, cumulative capacity is in the last column. And I'll explain what the capacity gets you. First, I quickly want to talk about the cost to borrow. So use some assumptions in borrowing. Anyone who's borrowed money knows that there's a lot of variables to borrowing. So this is assuming that the select board agrees that things that last 10 to 20 years can be borrowed for 10 to 20 years. Assuming a 5% interest rate, which is very conservative. We talked to our funding specialists, and right now we could probably get around 4%, but we don't know where the market's going to go. So for a 10-year borrow for a vehicle or a building expenditure, if you borrowed $100,000, it would cost you $13,000 in your operating budget. For a 30-year borrow for, say, a new building, I know that's a topic we might consider tonight. For every $1 million borrowed, it's $65,000 in annual costs to fund that debt. So in this model, this proposed model, every 100,000 in capacity that you maintain in the operating budget gives you the ability to borrow $1 million. So for example, next year, we may be considering a fire truck, which is about $1 million. You would need to add into your debt in your operating budget in order to fund that debt, which reduces your overall debt capacity. So if you did the plan as it's recommended here, the 3 major projects in the next 5 years in terms of debt, which is a fire truck, an HVAC system, and a fuel pump, you would take your debt as a percentage of operating budget from 3.75 to 2.5, which means if you're all looking at it, you still have the capacity to borrow more, which is why you can attack the deficit with more borrowing if you wanted to. And this is just a quick snapshot of that capacity. So the capacity, if you maintain it with discipline in your operating budget, would allow you to borrow another $2 million on top of this recommended model, which is a lot of borrowing capacity. An ability to fund that deficit is shown in the plan. Any questions on that?
I know Heidi had a question she put in the chat.
Heidi? Oh, can we get Heidi's question answered?
Heidi, can you explain the question using terms I?
Sure, this was from, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Earlier, we were looking at the overall capital plan. It looked to be about 2 million a year, roughly, for the next 5 years. I was trying to get a sense of if that's a good estimate of a longer term run rate, or are we facing some near term capital projects that we've been perhaps kicking the can down the road and now we're backlogged. And once we clear out the next 5 years, we anticipate that going down. And that question was related to something you said a few slides earlier. So I apologize that it's a little out of context.
Well, I feel like you did that on purpose because this slide addresses that. So
Perfect.
Future capital considerations. So this is more speculative. The rest of it has been a lot more modeled. So our fire truck fleet is aging. How we address that is an important consideration. Over the next 15 years, the replacement cost for our fire trucks is about $4 million. So that's going to require debt capacity. So although we seemingly have a lot of debt capacity, we also have a lot of costs past this 5-year model that we may want to consider. Second, you're considering major renovations and building projects that are not captured in this funding strategy. So, for example, $20 million in building costs is about 1.8 million annually in excluded debt. This is assuming a 25-year borrow at 5%. The tax impact of 1.8 million annually excluded, meaning not in this model, is $957 per average household, with an average household defined as a $1.1 million home in Carlisle. So you could use some of your debt capacity or free cash to help defer the costs of potential building projects, but that's going to eat away your capacity to fund capital as shown in this plan. So it'll be a balance or a trade-off. As referenced earlier, the spending strategy does not invest heavily in town road maintenance. I don't want to throw out a number, but it's millions, not thousands, to maintain our current level over the next 5 to 10 years. However, we do, spoiler alert, have decent roads in Carlisle, so some targeted spending might solve some problems and allow the town to meet a reasonable threshold of road maintenance. But it will require either borrowing or free cash usage, which means this model will adjust. And then larger facilities maintenance expenditures are assumed to move to the operating budget. This is a big policy decision that I cannot make, but that year-to-year maintenance of under $100,000 should move into the operating, while bigger projects, which have currently been in the capital plan, those smaller ones have been under the MFC's control. That should shift a little bit as the MFC focuses on larger projects. Just a quick example of a future capital consideration. We just received a report on the MFC received a report on the conditions of Town Hall. It does fit into about a $600,000 to $800,000 expenditure as shown in FY28 in this model. However, if we were to do the siding on the building or really work on the envelope of the building, it's going to be over $1 million, and that's not on this plan. So there's a lot of decisions still left to be made. So tax impact, just wanted to show that last slide. I demonstrated a $1.8 million excluded debt cost that does decline over time, which does increase your capacity. So I just wanted to see that $957 impact reduces down to $450 today's dollars in 25 years. So it does decline and then start to create more capacity, which is why our current debt is declining as well. The options for funding this rather than straight taxation include supplementing with operating, borrowing, and free cash, as has been said several times in this presentation. This does not include the tax impact from increasing the annual operating budget. So that is a complexity I didn't want to put on a slide and talk about for hours tonight, but that is also a variable in this. So some conclusions, maintaining this model requires careful consideration of a lot of variables: operating costs, expenses, or what people want to spend their money on, our revenue reserves, how much we borrow, and then what are we doing with those large expenditures, and how does that fit and change into this model? Addressing future capital deficits require town officials to consider reducing your capital expenses, reducing reserves, increasing debt, or increasing revenue, assuming all things stay the same. And larger considerations, as we discussed, building projects and renovations, large investments in road maintenance, and then major land purchases, which are discussed. All of those are not in this model and would have to be added to it. And I will say this, so we do try to intentionally generate that free cash. We do know that this year we have generated over $1 million in free cash. So there will be some excess that will allow us to address some of these problems. That can't be guaranteed year to year, but with discipline and focus and modeling, you can sort of smooth out those curves, as David said earlier, and either put away money for deficits or, increase your spend. Questions?
So Craig.
Brian, I know I've asked this before, but just to highlight and clarify, the proposed or the recommended funding strategy highlights 2.25 million of possible debt. You also said we'd have an additional 2 million of capacity. Is that right? So
Yes.
Potentially we have 4.25, 2.25 is captured here, and then we can decide on this.
If you maintain your debt capacity and don't use operating budget for other things, which is that's a big variable, a lot of discipline.
But it's important to note that, you know, as we will be discussing, and Ryan has put a placeholder of 20 million, although we think it won't be that much, but the public safety capital project, which will be in the teens of millions, let's say, would soak up all that and more, right? So it's kind of a two-part, in my mind, maybe it's a three-part thing, and I do commend Ryan for bringing a lot of clarity to this. There's the operating piece, which we all deal with all the time, which we kind of understand, right? Because that's every day, what we spend, what about, you know, how much taxes, da, 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 da. And the point, again, to reiterate, is being disciplined on that to generate free cash and then using that free cash strategically to apply to capital. Then there's the fiscal discipline generally, which includes that free cash, also includes, you know, not, I don't want to say frittering away, but just not having a lot of little projects that chew up that actual debt capacity. So you end up with that $4 million of borrowing capacity. So you have some meaningful money you can apply. And then the third piece is going to be when you have special projects like a building where you just can't possibly close that gap. You got to also put in a tax increase, right? And I think we owe it to the voters to say we've done everything we can to minimize that. But, you know, here it is. If you want a public safety building, or I was relating to Ryan that I guess we are fortunate. He's fortunate to come in later. Craig was there. We lived through the collision of two major school projects about 10 years ago, and we absorbed them. And it was a big debt load for the town. But the good news is, as you show in the chart, it's coming down because we've been pretty conservative since. I mean, we needed both of those buildings. I mean, one was joint with the Concord, but we did it. And also, by the way, at a time when MSBC was giving out pretty good money, matching money. So that was good. But we've done it. We are on the downside of that spend curve. And so we are building up capacity. So we're in a good spot that way. But there are building projects. There are things we need to spend money on. So I think the major takeaway for me is keep as much dry powder, you know, as you can, so that when you have to spend on those projects, you're impacting the taxpayer as little as you possibly can.
Nathan?
Ryan, I just wanted to say that was excellent. Thank you very much.
Yes, could you, sorry.
You got
Sure to
it.
talking to the microphone.
It's Aubrey yelling at you, not me.
Okay, Mark Bernstein, Finance Committee. That was,
Welcome, by the way.
Yes.
Glad to have you. Welcome.
yeah, thanks. Really great to see this. Let me just make sure I understood at the end when you talked about the major projects, you're going to include them in a future version of the model. You just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, you're going to include them or not. I'm just going to put it in the spreadsheet. So it's really what's decided.
Okay. Well, I think we should. We should include
It's a
what we-
framework. I think what he's saying is it's a framework and it's a needed one. I agree with Nathan. You know, it's a really good effort here that we need the framework so that we can make these trades, right? So when you guys sit down and you say, well, what does a public safety building look like, or two buildings? What does, you know, a senior center look like? What does an extra truck look like? I mean, we have a way of modeling that and saying, all right, you know, so it's really
Absolutely.
important.
No, I got it. So right now I take it this is what, an Excel spreadsheet? Is that what this is?
It is, yep.
Is the thought that we would transition this to some kind of commercial, some piece of software we could buy instead of just the spreadsheet? Spreadsheets tend to be, in my mind, they tend to be hard to maintain, and you wind up, they're prone to like people diddling and ruining the whole thing. Because you have a piece of software that says, enter X here. I mean, there must be financial planning software for towns that do everything that you have here and more.
Yes, which would be another capital request.
It's under $5,000. All right. And then I was it just because you just ran out of enthusiasm? But I mean, there are standard inflation tables that the government uses all the time. That rather than just lumping it into a unknown, we know we're going to inflate at least 3% a year on average.
He's built in the 3%.
No, he said he dumped it into a 10% contingency. He
Well, the operating,
didn't commit to anything. You have it
committed
for
to a
operating.
3% operating, budgetary increase, right?
Yeah, but-
You're talking about the cost of capital inflating.
Yeah,
So in this model presentation, I intentionally kept some variables for
Yeah.
the boards to discuss so that, but if you tell me to add X inflationary variable, I'm hoping that this model turns into a plan
yeah, right.
based off of the input from but I'm not, able to just say what you should do.
And then, since it predates my knowledge, whenever the town decided that we wanted to have a 12% reserve, was that reserve in part to fund, other than, emergencies and unknowns, but to have build up a reserve to fund capital projects that this would then be funding? And therefore, we might want to have a 10% reserve and have more
great-
money
great
available for
question.
projects.
We did talk about a lot in the budget process last year. Towns that are in good financial condition with strong bond ratings have 10% for sure. Towns with the financial strength of Carlisle usually are 10 to 12. So we're at the top end. I think with all the deferred maintenance and everything, my recommendation would be, it's time to spend a little bit. So that'll be up to you.
Consider splitting the difference and doing 11.
Irony is you can borrow when you don't need the money. So the bond agencies like to see a lot of reserves.
That is the end. We have a couple more minutes before it's 7:50, but any other questions, comments?
Hey, Kate, this is Victor. I do have a question, or I'd say more of a comment. I think it's great, Ryan. I think we've been looking for something like this for quite some time. I think the aspects, a comment on the debt capacity. I think you highlighted earlier that the school is actually a known unknown. And there are a few things that we probably want to keep track of because they're seeing the same thing, right? Essentially, you're paying down the debt on the school and it's opening up capacity for them to consider other projects. And so I had an initial meeting with the superintendent and the chair of the region, and a few things that they kind of highlighted, and they're nothing concrete. It's just initial discussions. I think Kate highlighted the stadium, I think the bathroom situation there, the Board of Health issue. The two other ones that they highlighted is that the school is coming in on about a decade, and that tends to lead to more maintenance needs. So that they don't have an assessment of that yet, but that's something that they're looking into. The other thing that they highlighted, and this isn't a new one, is that quote unquote campus completion. Things like, I think if you remember in past history, a track on certain pieces of land and whatnot. So it's all to say, there's known unknowns, that whole aspect of our debt capacity and such is kind of intertwined with what's happening at the region as well. So no answers, but just a comment on that.
I make a quick comment. So Ryan, thank you. This is excellent. It's kind of what we talked about as a board, of what we were looking from you. So thank you. When I look at this, and I'm on the MSC as well, and we talk about a lot of these expenses, or have looked into this a bit. And one of the thoughts, or it's somewhat of a concern I have, it's more, I guess, a question, is relative to all of these capital expenses. Obviously, each department puts forward what it thinks is needed and so forth. But how do we, as the select board and the FinCom, start to evaluate what is really needed within those departments? Should we be having some consultant or someone evaluate that so that we're buying equipment when it's needed and not, how do we, because I don't want to, oftentimes we just pick, we say, oh, they don't need this for another year or whatever. And maybe they do and maybe they don't. But how do we get a professional judgment of that? Is there a way to, or have you thought about that?
It's definitely building your own priorities. So if I could make one comment on financial decision-making, it's very strong in Carlisle, but it's often made in a vacuum. So if a department comes in and they say, I need something, they're going to make a strong case and you're going to be left with the idea that they need that. And they probably do, which is why they're making such a strong case. The reason for the capital plan and the model is to compare, okay, if we do fund this, what are we not funding? And if I could just, like, one story from this model is that we can pretty much afford most of the maintenance and things that are needed without additional taxes. And as long as we don't use any of that capacity for the building projects, and that's going to be a big ask because that's going to have a tax impact. So while there is some funding available, the bigger decisions that haven't been made are going to shrink that quite a bit. So it feels like we have a lot of reserves now, but that's going to shrink down in the next 5-10 years as you use debt capacity and free cash and debt exclusions to fund the deferred maintenance. So it's comparing each decision to the bigger picture and making sure that everybody brings the same argument to the table to you, which will allow you to see the priorities. So it might be that this piece of equipment adds this service level, but do you as a town want that service? The department is always going to increase their service level. It's okay, but that might not be something that Carlisle needs or wants.
If I can expand on that, and I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't mention it in my earlier little summary. The tool allows, as I mentioned earlier, to make trades, right? So really you have two pieces. There's the tool that Ryan has provided, whether we use a commercial software, fine, but basically you can put inputs, you can do what if scenarios. Then there's in a way, a very important part of this presentation is that 5-year capital planning model where people get to say what they think they need, right? What's not in there right now, besides the building, is sustainability costs, which may be in the operating budget, but it still adds into the picture, and affordable housing and buying land and, all that jazz. To name two, I mean, there are other ones, but to name two initiatives that we, either as the board or the town has told us are important. So to reiterate what Ryan's saying, if the DPW comes and says, I need a new dump truck, they need it. They're going to tell you why they need it, but you have to look at that in the lens of every little bit is going to chip away at some other thing. So it's really incumbent on everybody here, and Victor and Scott, is he on the committee still? No, never mind. Heidi, okay. To really be thinking about the stack up of priorities, the strategic priorities. It's the first time, not the first time, but it's an opportunity for us to take a real serious multi-year look at the priorities. So when those things come up, it's very tempting to jump into them. And it may be small money, but it adds up, and you can see how it adds up. And so, like I said earlier, if we start with the assumption that we have to close a $2 million gap, that's okay. We probably can. But that didn't talk about buying land for affordable housing. It didn't talk about some major sustainability initiative that might, cost money. So that's really the value. At the end of the day, that's the biggest value to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're ready to adjourn.
All right.
You guys get to adjourn.
We'll hang around with you. I'm going to adjourn. I'm here to adjourn the FinCom meeting. If I could have the roll call of everybody on the phone, please.
Liang,
Schober,
Kapinski, aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Brian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Stick around for the police.
Great job for everybody.
Yeah, police station. Chief, why don't you rejoin us, please?
Madam Chair, you also have Justin from TBA on for questions about the proposal.
And online or?
Yes.
Okay.
Can walk you through it initially if you
Great.
want,
Oh,
or
there he is, just a hot face. Thank you. So, Or do we
I'm
want-
sorry, one more update. There is a PowerPoint that didn't make the packet, but I think it's important to the discussion that Chief Amendola brought tonight. Each one of you has one.
Okay. So why don't we do the PowerPoint, bring us up to, or do you have that to share?
I do.
Okay.
Chief's gonna walk us through.
Yeah, Chief.
Good to go? All right.
Yep,
Um,
you're up.
So yeah, the packet that I provided, the PowerPoint is just some of the changes that I've discussed as the police chief, knowing that the building is going to be, there's going to be a renovation at the building, hopefully. These were some of the things that I thought would help take the building to where it needs to be for the modernization of the police department, as well as kind of putting us in a good spot for the future, thinking out as far as people joining the department. So if you can just don't want Justin to make fun of my architecture designs here. So that first section there, this is the basement. So this is part of the TBA plan, already includes the new and updated booking room, prisoner area on the left that's not highlighted there, as well as a sally port. So that's probably one of the most important parts of the renovation, as that brings everything up to code, as well as accreditation standard for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. On the right side, where those red lines are, that's where I've implicated my change. So that stairwell, we've been advised that we don't need that second stairwell due to the size of the building in the structure. So my idea is to push the exercise room there up against that wall and decreasing some of the space from the exercise area and transitioning it back into the locker room. As we've seen tonight, we penned another female police officer, and keeping with the diversity of the police department, the female locker room is extremely small and it's actually filled right now. So if we were to hire another female officer, hopefully within the future, that wouldn't be capable to place them in the locker room as is right now.
Just to be clear, in case you haven't seen this, this is the, sort of the existing plan, whereas your lines across it don't show what you plan to do.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the existing plan.
He would like
This-
that
we-
change.
The red is my changes.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the basement area. This is the first floor. So again, it would be to create a community room, training space, create a public interview room. If you kind of see to the left of the community room, I don't know if you can zoom in again, Ryan, but. So the building actually lacks an interview room right now. So it would create a custodial interview room. There was in the previous plan, there was a two-way mirror. However, that took up some space that we thought we could condense by just adding some software with a camera and a case management system that will help us do the interrogations online. And then merging that first aid section, just merging that with the sergeant's office, making it one area for them. And then in the front lobby, it would be adding another bathroom and a public interview room as well. So for the community room / training space, some things to think about and why I wanted that is just to kind of create an innovative hub for police training and community education, inviting community members into the police department. As you guys know, one of my main goals as the police chief is to continue to push the mission of community policing. This opens up an interactive spot for the community to utilize as well as the police department. One of the other things that we just kind of realized with that little microburst storm that we had, it could be set up and used for space for an emergency operations center for emergency management. I think sometimes what I noticed that last storm was communication can be kind of difficult between department heads, and centralizing us into one location to allow us to have some capability there would allow us the space to be able to talk and communicate during those types of things. And then kind of just an overall goal of, God bless you, is just creating casual interactions to continue to create those partnerships for the community. The interview room, so that would, again, just be an idea to just put there and have the technology with the camera and custodial interviews opposed to the two-way mirror, as I mentioned, merge the sergeant space together. There's currently two offices there. One's listed as a first aid. I'm not sure, but that is a current sergeant office. So that would be utilizing that space to create a more open space for the sergeants and merge it together. You can move to the second floor.
Where were you planning on putting the handicap accessible bathroom that with the public one?
You can go back to that. It's my rectangle there in the front lobby.
Oh. Okay. It'd be cheaper if you backed it up to the other one, but.
While we're on this, Chief, could you talk a little bit more about how you would see the community? You said something about the community space, bringing more people into the police station. Just, can you give us some examples of what that might look like?
Yeah, so just any type of meetings that occur in town, it'd be a space that people could book the room and use it. It would be an excellent space for us to hold some training that we're hoping to plan on doing with the community as well, and really kind of welcome people into the police department instead of driving by and saying, don't want to be at that place. It's really kind of a room that allows the public to come into and utilize too.
Thank you.
Where's Athena's office?
So I just want to clarify, this base plan that you have here, that's your current plan. That's your current situation. It's not the new plan the TDA drew.
This one's the current. This one is the current outlay of the station. The previous slide actually is one of the TBA slides because it just showed the booking room. I just wanted
Right.
to point out that that
Okay.
would remain in the plan
Okay.
and there would be no changes there.
Okay,
that
because it would really be helpful to have seen this overlaid on the TBA plan. Because there were some of those things in the TBA plan and I don't remember what they were.
So yeah, so I can kind of
How
touch,
much this has changed from the TBA plan.
I can touch briefly on that if you
So
want.
just generally, Madam Chair, the idea behind considering these decision points from Chief Amendola is not for them to design what the chief designed, but to look at that space and what he's asking for and make a cost-effective and programming change. So we couldn't show what would actually happen. That's what the work we're proposing that they do.
I'm talking about the original, the past
Right.
plan, which had some of those things in. So that's why I'm questioning it. Because I know there was an interview room and a classroom in there.
But I
That's
think,
why I'm,
I think that the point is that these are functions that we would be asking TBA to consider in their design of it. We're not designing it here.
I understand that, but I understood that this is asked, that there is a current plan that was designed by TBA that didn't get built, that we are comparing, that Chief Amendola would like to change to have some things put in. So I'd like to know what the difference of is. This is the current layout. The new plan doesn't look at all like this current layout. So I don't understand what the difference is between what Chief Amendola is asking for and what was already proposed by TBA.
And isn't that something that TBA would tell us?
No, maybe TBA, we have somebody.
Right,
that
I mean,
can
that part
answer
of
that, right.
Yeah, what this would
Yeah.
do is look at, okay, if they were to provide these additional functions, spaces, looking at what they had provided before and then comparing it to that, what the new layout might be and the cost difference.
Yeah.
That's part of what they would do.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Just to make sure that I'm understanding, you're not saying that what you've drawn here, these rooms would be, you want them in that particular location. You're just saying you need this function built into the plan.
Yeah, this is just my ideas towards the plan of the current layout of the station.
It's very beautiful too. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the final floor, the second floor, this would be, there's one training room up there that exists right now, and then there's an office space. So this would be, again, we're getting rid of that staircase on the right side, and that enables us to just create a giant open workspace for the officers to all be in the same area, have their workstations there. Helps maximize the flexibility of the second floor for sure. And then if I can just say, my ideas, all in all, I just believe that they create an open, transparent, and inclusive design to enhance police community relations, to continuously improve our public's trust and confidence in their police department. I ask that if these renovation changes can be looked at, it'll help improve public relations that we hope to do so. It just creates a more accessible, functionable area for employees as well.
Great. Thank you. So, Justin, you want to join us? Do you have any comments?
Good evening.
Like,
A couple of things that I could comment on is on the first floor, most of your recollection is correct. Most of the spaces that are talked about in this presentation were included in the plan before. I think the major change is trying to increase the size of the community room, which is something I believe we wanted to do, and we're looking for a way to do that. So I think that the chief's got some ideas of how some of the office spaces can move, which would allow the training room to get larger because we sort of move some of that to the second floor. So my my current proposal includes looking at the first floor, some first floor reconfiguration, as well as a bit of change to the second floor to accommodate that as sort of part of that base column in the proposal. The other one is if we're getting into a sort of more complete reconfiguration of the basement level with the locker rooms.
Okay, you're saying you're really reconfiguring the locker rooms quite a bit? Okay.
Yeah, because so the locker rooms at various points in the previous design iterations and things, we'd looked at some small modifications to those locker rooms, but ultimately where we landed in by March of 2020, the locker rooms were not a part of the project. So if we were to look at reconsidering the locker rooms and the exercise area, that's in that options and update column.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, Justin can explain this as well, but tasks 1 through 5, as shown here, would get you the conceptual design for you to consider with a reestimation of costs for you to make a decision, perhaps to bring to town meeting or not, or to change. Tasks 6 and 7 would bring you the most accurate costs and documents you would need to go out to bid. And then tasks 8 through the warranty would be for after a town meeting approval. So tonight, if you wanted to move forward with this proposal, the left column is to update the existing plan, and the right column is to update the plan with the recommendations that the chief has included.
So I think I'd like to take it stepwise, in fact. So I'd like us to decide left or right column to start with.
Well, in order to do that, though, let's go up and down. So that's 1 through 5 is what we need to authorize to have presentation materials for town meeting, right?
Yes.
And Justin, you can, if we vote that in, you can get that accomplished in time for the meeting in 3 weeks? No.
No, this is not for.
Oh, it's for spring. Oh, okay. We're not talking about it. Okay, great. Thank you. Never mind. Never mind. So given that it's spring, then are we looking at just the first line? Or are we looking at authorizing the entire thing to be?
Oh, well, okay. So let me tell you, I think there's several steps. First, we have to decide, do we just do this simple one that we've got plans, we just use them, and we'll have to update them, but or do we modify them? Okay, so that's left and right column. All right. Then after that, we're going to want to do tasks 6 and 7, I think, for sure, before town meeting. And the question is, then after that, do we want to get bid documents and maybe even estimates before we go to town meeting? Okay, so
Would we want to do 6 and 7 before town meeting? Because 1 through 6 gives us enough information to be able to go to town meeting to do the project. I don't think we necessarily want to spend the 50 or the 82 and the 17 now if town meeting decides not to go forward. Because then we've got full construction documents that we're not moving forward.
which is what happened to us the last time, because we had construction documents that didn't
What,
get.
what we want is a really, really good estimate, and I'm assuming 1 through 6 gives us that. Is that right, Justin?
Yeah, so included in 1 through 5 is this goes, I have revised the plans with these some of these new ideas. Have my team of engineers give a revised or narratives and essentially quantifying the revisions to the previous set of documents that would be needed. And then all of that goes to an outside cost estimator in order to give us, what this is going to cost in today's dollars. The regulatory approvals task 6, that's not necessary for an estimate. Although, and I'm saying that thinking we had at least started the process with the various regulatory boards previously, and so had gotten through certain notifications and discussions with staff. Hadn't had public hearings. The outcome of those board meetings or those hearings could possibly impact the cost, but I think within sort of the contingency that would be built into the estimate that we get under tasks 1 through 5. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not absolutely necessary that you go through all of the approvals, because the regulatory approvals include, and this is I think differs from how we were working before. I tried to sort of under a fixed fee have the civil engineer who leads most of those regulatory approvals put in a certain number of meetings and a certain amount of work under the fixed fee. There are still things that are reimbursable, such as if the meetings carry on, the hearings carry on through multiple meetings, then there's some additional fees in there. So task 6 is potentially not as fixed in its cost as all of the other tasks.
Justin, I get that, but
Yep.
in the it's interesting. It's one of the cheapest line items and it has the longest statement of work. So there's all these parts, right? And so
Yeah.
I understand that we may go a few rounds with Board of Health or Planning Board on some nuances, but what concerns me is if CONSCOM, because we're abutting wetlands and things like that, is there any risk, I guess, that the design itself just stubs its toe on something that you just can't do? Because that would be the most important thing to make sure that we had cleared prior to going to town meeting with a request. Like, yeah, there may be some cost adds or maybe a few tweaks because, planning board has some reg we have to meet. But if there's a hard stop because we're interfering with the wetland or something and it's just a no-go, that's something we absolutely would want to know before we went to town meeting. Is there any of that in task 6 anymore? Because one of them I think you'd cleared already.
Yeah, I think no, I don't think that there's hard stops, and this is based on the conversations that were had with staff and the design work that had been done previously. Everything that we'd shown, we had sort of been indicated to us that it would receive approval. The septic passes, I believe, passes Title V. We're making some modifications to some portions of it, but as far as conservation, I mean, the building, the garage building that we have out back, as well as the garage extension to the building, those had, as I said, been sort of preliminarily approved. It's just the formal hearings hadn't happened. So I guess I would be surprised if at this point any of those said, stop, you can't go any further, you can't do these things, because we had gone through a couple of years of working through these before. So I would look at it as more, there may be some tweaks, and there's certainly requirements during construction that would have to be met. Landscaping and maybe some changes to pavement or something, but
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Well,
Nathan?
I don't have a question. I
Okay.
have more of a
Statement?
statement.
Go ahead. Go for it.
So your question about column A or column B, I realize that it's adding almost $40,000 to it, but I think this is going to be an expensive project. And we have a new police chief, and I think that he should have some input into what is happening throughout this process. So I think that flexibility is something that we should provide, and I think we should do the options and update.
Okay. Any other comments?
My
Travis?
comment would just be on the process. David touched on this, but, and I think this is to the leadership of the board to how we want to step by step proceed with this. And I think we as a board need to kind of understand and come to an understanding of how we want to proceed, because I think tonight I would certainly be in support of options and update for tasks 1 through 5. But the question is, do we then do this and go to town meeting, or do we preload everything? Because if you go to town meeting and they approve it and then it comes back more, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, so I think, great point. I think I would combine this with the meeting we just had. I mean, I think, and I agree with what Nathan said about options and update. If we were to approve the ARPA 30,000, which is what's on the table, they, CBA is going to come back with their estimate. In parallel, I think we're going to get a fire station estimate at some juncture. We still have a lot of time to Springtown meeting. I think then we got to look at that with FinCom, model it. And I believe, let me pose it as a question, not a statement. There's time then to do 6 and 7. I mean, Justin, when would you have if we authorize 1 through 5 tonight, like when would you have that number and that design, that high fidelity estimate?
So I think
we don't need it to the week.
No. I think we had been talking about having that all set by December.
Yeah. So now fire station will be behind, so we got to get them caught up. But let's just hypothetically say, in the wintertime we have 2 estimates. I think there's time for us to consider whether we want to add to the scope and get all the ducks in a row. I mean, the marketing plan comes after we get a general idea what we got to spend. So that would be my recommendation.
Great. That makes sense.
The fire department just went out to bid today for the design. The design selection should be made by the 1st or 2nd week in November. The contract with someone, if you choose to. So if you use the same timeline, you'd get that in February or March. You'd have some type of
March gets a little tight, so it would be nice to get that sped up. I mean, I'm comfortable with what TBA is saying, right? Get it in December, January. You got plenty of time to do a little more work, but you don't really have that luxury if the estimate only comes in March.
I think the difference is this design is much farther along than the fire department.
I understand that. I'm just saying if our goal, back to what Travis, if the goal is to present a comprehensive plan to the town in April or May, whenever we're meeting, that's what we're saying. We have to look at like what the preliminary estimates say, figure out if it's a go from us from a modeling standpoint, then we can decide, do we need to get a little more fidelity, a little more completion, and sounds like we can do it here. It would be not great if we could do it for one, but not for the other. We should try to get the two on their same path if we can.
You can do it in steps.
Okay, so I can make a motion, but
I just want to I just have one other comment, and that is about the community room at the police department, because of things that we have said at other meetings where we want then to be sure that it's truly a community room. You want to invite the community, but we want also the community to feel free to go in without necessarily being invited, and maybe asked if they can use it. Because we're trying to have multi-purpose spaces. We have lots of functions that are looking for spaces in town, and we're trying to house a lot of these programs. And it's can COA go play mahjong there, if you're not using it for something else?
As long as I'm invited, yes.
Okay. I just want,
Yeah, absolutely. That's as simple as setting up a community calendar to book the room and things like that. It's
just so you know that there might be some pressure that direction. Okay.
Okay, so before making the motion, I just want to ask, and this might be for Justin, but this motion says that it's approving the proposal presented by TBA Architects. That's not excluding what the chief just presented, right? Okay. All right. So I move that the select board vote to approve the proposal presented by TBA Architects for updating the Carlisle Police Station conceptual design.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Is there a companion?
That's not, that doesn't have to do with the funding. That has to do with just this
That's
proposal.
the first part.
that
Yeah,
we
right.
see There,
Got it. Go ahead.
okay? No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Then there's a second motion.
And I move that the select board approves what I assume is really $30,575 in ARPA funds to be used for the consulting services necessary to update the TBA Architect Police Station conceptual
Where's
design.
your budget, Ryan? 2025.
37 million.
That's not embarrassing at all.
It says 30 million.
I saw that. I was gonna stay quiet. And hopefully, maybe it went through.
So did I hear a second on that?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion about that? All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Can I just ask,
Sorry,
so
go ahead.
you have ARPA discussed this?
ARPA has discussed it, yes,
And supports it.
and supports it.
I'll speak. So the
ARPA's
ARPA
coming
committee
up.
met
Yeah.
and said they couldn't be here tonight, but they said if the select board votes to spend the money, then the select board votes to spend the money, and they have the recommendation of the ARPA committee.
Great. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That's it.
All right, well,
Now,
thank
or
you very
then
much.
vote on using the ARPA as a funding source. So now we do need to have you guys make, sorry.
The only other one is, do you want to have him?
Oh, yes. He's going to stay, I think. Chief, you're going to stay for the MOU? Okay,
Do we move the MOU?
Yeah.
We move it up?
Yeah, let's
Go home.
okay, we'll just do that next then. Well, you wouldn't take any time to do this ARPA thing, just have to. All right.
No, it's
Uh,
the fall town meeting warrant.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We're going to
All
go.
right,
to-
so we're going to go
That-
forward to the number
6.
6 and 7.
6 and 7, yes.
Page 56, and if you're looking at it in the packet.
Okay, here we go, I found it. All right. Police Mutual Aid Memorandum of Understanding approval.
Want the chief to? Just want to make sure this was reviewed by town council.
Ryan, was this reviewed by town council?
It was not.
It was reviewed by Ryan, who compared it to the last one.
But I can have it reviewed.
Did you find any changes from the last one?
Yeah, is it pretty much the same as the previous one?
It is. Chief, do you want to speak to that?
So this MOU is something that currently the police department's already a part of, along with other towns within Middlesex County. It just creates a giant MOU that we're already in, and simply the only reason they're asking for a new MOU is because I'm new, and there's been some changes to the different police departments. So they sent it out to those departments that have new police chiefs. So that's really the only reason.
So yeah, I didn't compare the two of them. They're the same.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
Motion section.
I move the select board votes to approve the 2023 version of the Carlisle Mutual Aid Memorandum of Understanding and is presented in the marketing packet. Meeting packet, sorry.
Okay.
I read that wrong, sorry.
Okay. It's hard to read.
Second.
Sometimes it's my.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. And we're going to move on. Don't go away.
Right.
Don't go away. We're going to move on
Back.
to the acceptance of the donation to the police.
Okay, so I'll start this one. So the police department had a donation for the building of a shed. We just had a discussion about rearranging this project, and I believe you either reached out or they reached out to you, Chief, and changed the parameters of the grant. They have to do this by going through their bank, and then we had our accountant review it. So the change in purpose would be to allow Chief Amendola to conduct training and other needs as necessary to keep the police department functioning at a high level, and also to help fund Athena, the K9 Athena. I'm never gonna get that. So it's a repurposing of an existing grant.
Until age 3?
Until age 3, yeah, what's
What
the
that
3?
means. Until 3
She's on her own after 3.
here.
Yeah, I really need Jen. Is my
3 is 21, right? So she's an adult at that point.
I mean,
just
On her own.
not until 3. I don't even know what that's from.
all right, I'll make the motion then. I move
It's
the
actually K9 Unit 3 is what it says. It's not
Oh.
unit.
Three.
Look at the letter from.
Okay, very good. Very
K9 unit 3, okay. I move that the select board accept in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the Fidelity Charitable Restricted Grant gift totaling $48,000 for the following purposes: police education, training, and associated equipment for the community policing initiatives, and support the Public Safety K9 Unit 3. And I may add that we graciously accept that.
With thanks.
With thanks,
Thanks.
sorry,
With gratitude.
with gratitude.
It's okay.
Jeez.
Does Unit 3 make sense? Is that coming from anywhere, or is that, I'm just.
No,
wondering.
that's not coming from anywhere.
So I guess I would suggest a friendly amendment that we just drop
Strike.
Unit 3 at the end of it.
Okay.
If I can just add one thing to that, so it is an anonymous donation. We don't, the police department doesn't know who the actual donors were, but if they're listening, I just wanted to personally say thank you. It's one of the nicest gestures I've seen as a police officer in my 17 years. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate whoever it may be to have the faith in us to utilize that funds in an appropriate manner. So thank you.
The unit 3 came from, as number 2, support the public safety K9 unit. And 3, the utilization of all funds to be the discretion of Chief Amendola. So, okay, so that's where that came from. Came at K9, there should have been a
Copy
period.
and paste error.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
I see.
So I amend that motion to include the number 3 in that.
No,
You have to have that.
but you put the word unit in, but not the word 3.
Well, wait, do
Just
we need
confirming
to
it
have
did-
though that item 3 in the motion, that it's at the discretion of the chief? No, okay.
Okay. All right, so I think we have the motion.
I second.
And you seconded it. Any further discussion and confusion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, with gratitude. Thank you very much
gratitude,
to the
indeed.
anonymous donor. So
Unanimous.
Athena doesn't, she won't get turned out when she's 3 years old.
She can eat tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Right.
you.
Chief.
All right, so we're going to go back up and vote the ARPA funding as a funding source for the 30,000.
Can we do that just now?
We did that.
We already
Oh,
did that. It passed unanimously.
Okay.
So we're
All
on.
right,
we're
that
on
was
to
the second
E20,
thing.
all
Okay.
town.
Fall town meeting.
44 in our packet.
Thank you. Okay.
So how are we going to do this one?
Question. We can start taking positions on these. And I think we just go down the line. So Article 1 is Long-Term Capital Requirements Committee. And to amend the bylaws.
I move that the select board, the Carlisle Select Board support Article 1.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 2, Town Building Committee Amendment.
I move that the Carlisle Select Board support Article 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Right, that's unanimous. Article 3, establishing an opioid settlement stabilization fund.
Can I
Do
just ask a
these,
question first, not about this article?
Oh, go ahead.
So is the finance committee going to be taking a position on any of these, or are they not
Oh.
because there's not really finance related?
Yeah.
I'm going to give a Ryan answer, maybe. The plan is we are going to talk about it at our next meeting next week. And most likely we will be taking positions.
Okay.
On
I'm going to pose it to the committee.
on the opioid ones, were you asking about the opioid or about?
I
the
was saying in general,
I was
right?
just
General,
asking.
general, Nathan?
General.
Yeah,
I was
that's
thinking
what I
about the
thought.
Ones that finance committee normally makes.
yeah.
And there may be some that are really not relevant
Uh,
for us
Well,
to take a
Certainly
position.
the opioid ones are, because that's sort of,
Right,
how you handle the
the
funds.
funding, yeah,
funds,
absolutely, yeah.
um,
But yeah, for the most part, we will go through it and we will take positions, or we might just
Yep.
decide to abstain, depending
No
on,
position, yeah.
or no position, yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ryan.
All right, so Article 3, establish an opioid settlement stabilization fund.
I move that this Carlisle Select Board support Article 3.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Article 4 is accepting the fourth paragraph of Chapter 40, Section 5B of the state code to allow us to do this opioid stuff.
Is that consistent with approving Article 3? They go together or they're not in opposition, right?
It allows funds received through the
Kind of have to all go together.
agreement
yeah.
Right.
to
Okay.
be dedicated to that stabilization
got it.
fund.
Right, so may I say, I move that the select board support Articles 4 and 5. No,
How about what's wrong with Article 6? In that case.
well, it wasn't on my screen. 4, 5, and 6.
Second.
Any discussion about these articles? Oh,
Just that we have reviewed this, in case anyone was wondering why we're just breezing through this. We
Yeah.
reviewed these at prior meetings.
we have,
Extensively.
and they're really, and the other thing is they're really housekeeping items in many
Well, we're
respects.
voting on it.
Yes, okay. So we have motion on the table and seconded to support Articles 4, 5, and 6. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Article 7 is a CPA article. Is there anybody here from CPA who wants to talk to us?
Well, I'll,
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were here.
unless there's somebody on the Zoom call, we, I represent the select board on the CPC, and we actually met earlier this evening and unanimously approved both of these articles. Okay. And again, the select board, we got a fairly extensive presentation on the central burying ground, I believe at our last meeting. And this has not changed. And similarly with the library renovations project. Does that indicate the amount? Oh, yeah, there it is.
Library.
Yes.
767,000. Nice round number.
The one thing, I'm not sure if it's in here or not, but just for information purposes, the CPC approved the Central Burying Ground grant request for a 3-year period, which is sort of the standard. And we're going to check in. If 3 years is the limit, then it'll be the same for the library. But if we're allowed to make that a 5-year commitment, that's what we would prefer to do, given the size of the project.
Right. And I read the contract. There's also a clause in there that says that the money won't be dispersed if the library doesn't get there.
Yes, good point. There's a condition in the library project about the funds. They need to match every $2 for every $1 that's being provided out of CPA funds.
Should we, let's take one at a time. Let's do 7 and then we can talk about 8.
I move the Carlisle Select Board supports Article 7.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion about Article 7?
Do you want a 5-year on 7 as well?
No,
Oh, okay. No.
it's a much more
Right.
contained
Got
project,
it.
very
Yep.
specific.
Yeah, and I thought there was some question though about whether there was some of the work that could be done and that it might be the number be changed, but I suppose they could change that in the motion. If some of the tree work, for instance, could not be, you couldn't use CPC funds for that.
Oh, we've gotten clearance for both of these been reviewed by council.
Okay,
And
that's,
so we're good to go on
Good
the
to-
tree
okay.
portion of the.
I guess as
project.
long as they're expending less, we just claw back the money. It's
Yes, no, that wasn't the problem. That was, yeah.
So, Barney, this speaks to, or maybe it's a Wayne thing, this speaks to June 30th, 2026. That's kind of only a 2-year period from 2.5 years, I guess. Sorry, it's 2.5 years. Is that,
We'll adjust it in the motion
okay, to be a full 3 years?
to whatever the CPC is recommending and can do. It'll change in the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, the grant documents will have that date in it.
Correct.
Is the general rule, though, the conclusion of the third fiscal year? I mean, is there a general rule about that, or is it the third anniversary of the vote? I mean, what is the,
I think it's the fiscal year.
I think so too, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, we
you'll-
should check that out.
meaning it's not less than, it would be like 2027, for example, in this case, right? You wouldn't shortchange it. You would go to the end of that third fiscal year.
Round up.
Yeah, you round up. Thank
Round
you.
up,
Okay.
yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No, this is good to know. All right, any further questions, discussion? All those in favor of supporting Article 7?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Article 8,
I move the Carlisle Select Board support Article 8.
Second.
any discussion about that?
So I'm not seeing the two, I see the 2-for-1 in the summary, but not in the article.
Correct.
That's right. That's actually originally last year, the library requested 400,000, and it was the CPC that felt that project like that, that was so important for the town.
I'm not debating that, Chair.
Oh.
Madam Chair.
That, well, it's just that the CPC is the one that,
We're putting the condition on.
the condition.
Right, but I'm just saying from the language, whatever the year, let's just use
Mhm.
what's written, the clawback deadline is identified in the motion. Shouldn't the match also be identified in the motion? Whenever it's, edited.
I guess that's something we would, council has reviewed this. I don't know whether that would be typical or not. It's a condition
I
that's.
mean, to me, the article is the legal thing and the explanation is just an explanation.
Yeah,
But if it's legal, if we're making it binding on a match, then I think it should be enumerated in the article.
well, let me read to you what it'll actually say in the grant agreement. One of the conditions is, hold on a sec. Yeah, that, at all times, funds dispersed under this grant agreement shall constitute no more than 1/3 of the total project spending. Applications for disbursement will require accountings demonstrating that this condition is met.
Okay, that leads to a whole nother set of things. So before we get down that rat hole, let's first say the people at town meeting are not going to read the grant agreement.
Correct.
So I still believe the article, it's a sentence
Could
that needs to be
explain
crafted by council. So
Mhm.
that's my just recommendation. I don't have any
Not
authority
the
to tell you
article,
that.
but the motion. Because
motion,
the
thank
article
you.
is
Well,
better complete, that we can't change the article anymore.
really? I thought you changed
Not
it.
the article, we'd have to do it on the floor.
I thought you said you would edit it because it says like June 30th,
Motions
2026.
handbook, you
Motion.
mean?
Well, I see Article 8. Oh, you mean the motion of the article?
Yes.
Okay.
The
Anyway.
motions don't necessarily match the articles because
Okay,
of-
all right. So maybe the motion. So then back to your point, now we get to a whole nother thing, because I'm very familiar with that in grant world that I'm in. Are you saying that, like, if you haven't completed your fundraising, but you start down the path of spending $1 million, let's say, you have to have 333,000 in the bank from this and 666. And then you can't go beyond that till you can have, so it's
Correct.
bit by bit.
Correct.
So that means that the construction plan has to be phased so you could stop, right?
Mhm.
You can't have like half a building and then stop,
Right.
right? So that's your intention?
Well, again,
I mean, that's your understanding of the library's intention?
that's correct.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
and the
And
castle.
remember, they already have,
The castle, you could stop, you have a slide over.
they already have, I've forgotten how much it is that's already been raised. What is it?
Close to 700,000 now.
Yeah. But yes, that's correct.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Has been discussion, any further discussion? All those in favor of supporting Article 8?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So unanimous. Article 9,
I was asked to ask a quick question of the select board, and if it's not a quick answer, then I could save it. But I think it came up when we discussed this, the library project, and the burying ground project, that it would be good to provide at town meeting the description of how much money we have in each of the buckets. Are you remembering
yes,
this?
we always,
Yeah.
usually
So
give a
the
report.
question just, and it doesn't have to be answered now, but maybe to Ryan and Kate, is to provide more guidance about exactly what you want that to include. Because I'm presuming it would be some kind of a slide that then would be added to the presentation. Unless
Well, Wayne is
you
here
have a
too, and
comment
he
on
may
it,
have
yeah, as our town moderator.
Wayne Davis, town moderator. This is actually not formally a moderator. It's not my authority, but I can tell you, since I know the answer, is there's a standard slide that the, whoever the chair of the committee had, it's been used for years, Luke
Okay.
had it and now I guess Drew has it and.
Well, Drew does not have it, so that's good. I guess we'll have to find it.
Well,
Okay.
he does have it, but.
Okay. All right. right.
I can resend it to him. But anyway, it's a standard format
Okay.
thing, so just fill in the numbers and you'll have it.
Thank you, Wayne.
It's probably more important in the spring when we're doing,
Well,
because
this is the
they're
first time
getting,
we're doing it in the fall, but it's,
Yes.
it's, I agree with you. It's a relevant piece of information to have.
Yeah.
Does it be, in addition to the amounts in each bucket, does it have a description of the authorized purposes of the bucket?
Well, each one is labeled.
Well, I know, but describe, like, I mean, we've had this discussion that what does the use historical mean versus open is obvious, right? But there's certain, the other ones have certain specific use constraints.
I don't think they've gone into that during town meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. It's just, open space and recreation, historic.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, fair enough. People can ask questions if they have questions.
yeah. Thank you, Wayne.
You're welcome.
Saved us a lot of hand wringing.
We've
Okay, we're on Article 9 and let me see, it is 8:45. I know, I'm just checking our time because we have time on our next agenda if we had to push anything off, but we have until 9:05. So,
So
town clerk, go ahead.
what do I do?
Move
I move that the Carlisle Select Board support Article 9.
Second.
All right, discussion. I did forward to everybody copies of all the emails that I received. Ryan, did you receive any input?
Nothing written.
Nothing written. Okay, so it wasn't an avalanche, I wouldn't say, but
I didn't have a chance to look at them. Is it all, do they break down for and against or
no, mostly against.
against? Okay, and roughly how many?
5?
Okay, thank you.
If you have something, you look like you're ready to speak. So.
No, I think this is, one of the ones that potentially is a little more, will have a lot more discussion around it and potentially more contentious. And so I think as the select board, we have to, if, I don't know where the other members of the board are and how they're going to vote or thinking about this, but we've talked about it for quite a while, and I think we've had a hearing on it, and we've heard from the town clerk, and I'd be inclined to support this, and I am inclined to support it. But I think that if we, as a board, decide to support it, we need to do a little more outreach and answer some of the questions that were in the, that came to you, Kate, that you disseminated, and I think that, rather than getting to town meeting and having this completely, if the board supports it and then have it, out overwhelmingly voted down, I think we won't have done our job as far as leading the charge there if we think that this is really important. So I think as part of this, if we're going to support it, we have to support some level of outreach on our own part as a board, as well as, come up with, better understanding of what the objections are and how we can overcome them, if that's the case.
Yeah, I agree with you, Travis. I think this is something that the select board has been concerned about for years. What happens? We were very lucky that we got Peggy when Charlene retired. But the board has been very worried about this for years. We did put this on the warrant in a town meeting 5 years ago, 5 years ago,
5 or 6.
and it was trounced.
Right.
And I think that it's in, I think that's fine, right? I mean, I think I think that's one of the things about this. I think, we do need to get our message out more about why we think this. But it's really about town meeting making the decision.
Yeah.
Who's going to make the presentation? Well, no, I mean, that's how you build, that's how you,
No, no,
one
that's-
way to get the advocacy is to make your case.
Yes.
That's from the governance task force?
Yeah, well, I did bring,
Said it pretty well.
the governance, the page, from the governance task force where they made the recommendation to make the town clerk an appointed position. And I felt it was a compelling argument. I still feel it's a compelling argument. And I've also done some research myself there, actually based on the letter, one of the letters that we got, I looked up the article that, they had referenced, and frankly, I thought you could read it either direction. You could read it, both in support of appointed town clerks or, against it. So, and I think I still come down, well, especially because we asked an independent group in town who did a lot of work. This recommendation they made was based on a lot of research, a lot of interviews of staff and residents and community members and volunteers, board volunteers, and they came up with a recommendation to make, and it has nothing to do with the person in the job. It has to do with the functioning of the town government. That's one thing they want to make here. And this government would function better if it were with an appointed clerk.
But
So-
that's, I agree with it,
Because-
but it's selective reasoning. And going back to what Nathan and Travis were saying. Nobody, I think, would argue with their central premise that it's a professional job. And if you're in a little town like Carlisle, the pool is limited. And if you're limited to citizens, you may not have people with that credential. I totally agree with Nathan. We've been very lucky.
We have been.
Okay.
And we could
But
get
it
lucky
doesn't
again.
address the flip argument, which is the independence of an elected voting official, especially in today's environment where all that stuff is subject to all the scrutiny. And that is what I believe, if we're going to build advocacy, we can spend one slide on that, and that's pretty obvious. We have to spend time thinking about how do you counter the independence argument when you take away the elected position. And I haven't heard that remedy. And let me ask one other question. Do we know in the Commonwealth what the split of elected versus appointed is roughly?
That was in one of the letters. It's roughly, it's a little less than half
It's like
That are
that are appointed.
appointed.
Yeah, and
comparable towns. Any idea of that?
just across the state. Depends. Comps are always interesting because it depends
Yeah, but-
upon which ones you pick.
I mean, small towns.
But
for instance,
I can tell you also, none of the towns that have gone to appointed have
going back.
gone back. They haven't said, oops,
Yeah.
this was a mistake.
Anyway, that's my advice is if we're going to support it, one of us at least has to get behind it and build that argument, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd say generally, there are a number of different, arguments that have been made in opposition to an appointed town clerk. And I think we need a sort of Q&A, right, that addresses them very clearly. And yeah, maybe that means we have to have a couple of people that are working on that language and what that will look like that we can review before we get into town meeting.
Who is going to present it?
Madam Chair, if I could just,
Yeah,
one thing I would like to address on behalf of the staff is there is a little bit of misinformation that's out there that I would just like to address for the staff, not for should we vote for this or not. But all employees are subject to the state laws, records laws, and the open meeting law. So whether it's appointed or elected, we have to follow the same laws, and we do. So every employee in town is appointed except for the town clerk, and we all follow all of the same laws that an elected official or a non-elected official does. We also, and I don't mean this tongue in cheek, but we are all appointed and we do not believe in cronyism. We work for elected officials and we follow the direction of the elected officials by law and have to. The town clerk cannot be removed by the town administrator alone. I don't have the authority to remove any employee without the select board.
If it were an appointed one, you're saying?
Correct.
Yes, okay, that's just.
I do not have any appointment power per the town bylaws and mass general laws. That strictly resides in this elected board. One comment that I do want to address is that all municipal employees believe in fair voting and keeping fair voting practices, and we're required to by law. We believe we're beholden to the people that appoint us, and on most, if not all of us, believe very deeply in public service and making sure that we do create separation of power and follow the law. The main recommendation from the staff in the executive office, the HR department, and myself is based off of job qualifications, pay, the residency requirements, and HR conflicts. For example, the assistant town clerk is appointed by the select board and works for and is rated by an elected official, which creates structural problems in terms of evaluation, appointment, and control. So it's one of the cases in the town where one employee reports to many people. So it's not just the department head that's at issue. It's also all the people that work for and around that person that have to deal with different types of reasoning. And lastly, an elected official does not necessarily fall under the personnel policies that everybody else does. So we do choose to pay our town clerk all the benefits and everything that everybody else gets, but that is not a given. They don't necessarily fall into the wage and classification plan. It has to be voted elsewhere, so it causes parity problems.
And it is also not without precedent, because our town treasurer and collector used to be an elected position as well, and that got changed. And I don't see people.
I mean,
feeling-
I guess, again, my recommendation is we should try to keep our message pretty simple, okay? So on the pro side is the professionalism. You alluded to part of that. I think the parity and the benefits, okay, fine, but I mean, that's not really central. I think central is you can go to a wider pool of candidates if you need to. You can always prefer a town resident if you choose to, right?
Right.
But on the other side, I think it's not about, I think your points are valid and probably we should mention them, but that's not really the central thing. And the central risk is not that the administrator will remove the town clerk, but that we, the elected board, will be conflicted and we will remove that person because that person works for us. It's not about the town professionals. It's about the person who's in charge of voting, reporting to people that are elected, not to the general public. That's a core thing in the United States right now. So I favor it, but I don't want us to overlook. We should think hard about how we address that and how we can convince the town that that's not an issue. And I don't, off the top of my head, have that argument in my brain, but
Madam Chair, can I offer a suggestion or actually a question? Do we have time, if we didn't vote on this tonight, to hold it off till the next meeting? And the reason I ask is maybe we could allocate a little time to, inquire with some of those comments you received and maybe even have those people and maybe, and get those and maybe even have another input session, albeit a little shorter than our last one, but on this issue, because this is it's a big issue, and I think I'd like to make sure we get it right.
Fine with me, the sense of the committee?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Because we could wait till October 10th.
Yes.
Right?
We can,
No.
we could wait. I'd rather not wait till the 16th.
Maybe
But
on the 10th, we
certainly we have,
some time.
we could have
to-
more input.
Input, exactly, and invite specifically people who have reached out to attend.
Right.
And let's hear the objections. I think
Right.
that's what we should be doing.
Actually, in fact, one of the articles that was in one of the letters, one of the people that was interviewed was a current select board member, but who had been a town clerk in 2 different towns, and they were actually in favor of making town clerks appointed. So, I mean, maybe that person would come and visit us, by Zoom. Huh? Somebody in the Cape, I have to look at the article again,
We
but,
can stick locally here. We don't
yeah.
need to go to the.
well, okay, we can talk to, anyway.
So I think if we do delay this until the next time, I think that we still need to know now, like, who's going to be presenting it, because we can't wait until the 10th to start putting that together. I'm not going to suggest it's me. I believe I presented last time and it failed miserably, so I'm probably not the right person to present it. But I think, for whoever is doing it, I think they should know now, because you're going to have to start putting those arguments together now.
Hmm. Well, I guess I can do it.
He is the head that wears the crown, Kate.
Yes. I'll take it on. Yeah, okay.
Fine. Do well.
Yes, and well, and who knows?
But do we want to, we also want to delay our vote as. a
Yes, we
select
are,
board
because
on
we would
this
like to
till the
hear some of
10th?
these,
Okay.
So I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay,
I'll withdraw my second.
all right. That's fine.
All right. 5 minutes.
All right, we have 5 minutes and
One more motion.
second, yes, we have one more motion. Now, this is a citizen's petition. Do we, in general, take positions on citizens petitions?
I'm not sure that we do.
Elaine? Mr. Dave,
Here we go. I'm trying to get back to
to
it.
the bench.
Wayne Davis, Town Moderator. So this is the sort of thing that, there's no law on it. There's no, it's not covered by town meeting time, which is the procedural thing. So really, it's up to each town and by, tradition, practice, judgment, whatever. Carlisle, compared to some towns, such as Concord, does not have a too active citizen petition history and tradition. So kind of varies. It's really up to you. You don't, just as in some towns, the expectation is FinCom will have a recommendation on every single one. Carlisle, we do not. Similarly, there's nothing that requires you to take a position. It's just, what is in your own best judgment. Do whatever you want.
I guess I'm going to just jump
Thanks.
in, yeah, and say that seeing that we declined to put this article on by ourselves, that it had to come on with citizens petition, we might want to not take a position because I think that was sort of our position. And I think I'd rather take no position than to come out against it and let the town meeting decide it.
Well, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I come to the same conclusion from a slightly different angle. I want to first of all thank Glenn and the ESC for putting on the information session, which was very helpful. So thank you guys. But what struck me in that session is there's still a lot of unknowns. And so I find us or anybody that feels they need to be for or again to be in a lose-lose situation. So if we were to support it and later it turns out we haven't researched all the T's and I's and unknowns, we've not done thorough due diligence before we supported it. We don't have the time, and I don't think all this information's known yet for us to be in that position to say we've researched it and we support it. I also agree with Kate that if we were to say no, and the reason for no is that we haven't done our research, that will get lost in the shuffle and we will be painted as, anti-environmental because we said no. So I also agree we should take no position, but it's because it's kind of half-baked at this moment. And so I don't feel confident enough to say yes, I haven't studied it enough, and I don't want to be the guy that says no to it. I'm not philosophically opposed to it.
Anthony, did you want to?
Well, yeah, I guess I think you weren't speaking for the whole board. I've done
No,
a
I was
lot.
speaking for me
I've
personally.
done a lot of research on this, and so I don't
Yeah.
feel like for me it's half baked. But I think that, I'm a little bit torn because on one hand, I think the select board should, this is what we're here to do, is to make the hard decisions. I know what my decision is if we decide to vote on it. But I'm a little bit inclined to say, I'm not sure that a citizen's petition that the select board should be making a vote in support or not in support of it, because we didn't put this on for a reason, right? Yeah. So, I don't know, it's like,
Well, can I just comment? If you'll recall, we decided not to put it on this warrant because we thought it was too early. Not that we weren't in support of it, and that we didn't want to be sort of the first adopter or one of the first. And so, and that, I felt like our conversation, when we decided not to put it on this fall's warrant, was generally supportive, but wanting to wait until some things were clarified. There was more experience in we had could see what other towns had experienced. So I just want to make that clarification. It's not that we didn't support the concept. It was more the timing of it.
yes, that's right.
Yeah. I do, Nathan, I have some of the same feelings that you do about our role as the select board. That, we've been elected by the town to be a group of people that provide leadership or provide guidance to the community. And do we have a responsibility to provide that around this particular article? I think it probably hurts the chance of the article passing for the select board to take no position. And maybe we're okay with that. But if we are supportive of this in concept, there's part of me that says, well, we should make that clear that in conceptually, this is something we think eventually would be good for the town, and leave it up to the meeting to decide whether it's this, they want to implement it now, they want to adopt it now, or wait until, say, the Springtown meeting. But you understand what I'm saying in terms of us taking a position or not? Right? Are we dodging, our responsibility to help people in town understand whether this is a good thing for the town or not?
I mean, I think you bring up a great point. Explaining if we decide a no position, explaining why we got to that conclusion is not a bad thing in my mind. To just say no position doesn't give any clarity to the thought process. For the very few people who aren't closely following tonight's meeting.
I'm a little more inclined to take a position on it, just because we had taken a position that we didn't think it was the right timing. We didn't support this at this period of time. And, it's not to say that we will or won't support it. I don't even know. We haven't voted on it, but, I think we were, your argument, David, or I think was, well, or maybe it wasn't you, but, it's a citizen's petition. So then we should, absolve ourselves. But it just, that could be true for any citizen position. And what if there was a citizen position that was, petition that was something, that we should vote on? I don't think we should use that as the standard because it's a citizen petition. I think it is kind of leadership of we're all involved in town extensively and have, we, in theory, should be looking at the big picture when we talk about budgets and needs of the town and everything else. And this falls under that umbrella of, is this good? And we're not going to make the decision. All we're doing is just providing some guidance. The town is going to make the voters make the decision, but they elected us to kind of give them some guidance because we invest the time in this. We're here all the time looking at all these issues. So I don't know, that's my thought on it.
Well, Barney, you said you thought maybe taking no position would be harmful, but taking a position against it would be even more so. So, and I don't know where our board is around that at this moment for this article at this time. I know where we were when we decided not to put it on the warrant. So there's that consideration too. Well, no, I need a motion. Somebody needs to make a motion or not. Or this will also, we could also put this off till the 10th. We have two. We'd have two left over that we'll deal with. Because it is 9:10. And we have committee and employee appointment policies, which is very important topic as well.
I feel like during the 10th is just hunting, isn't it?
Okay, well, somebody make a motion. There are 3 motions that can be made.
Well, I mean, I guess,
Make a motion.
I guess I would be inclined to make the same motion that we made on every other one. And
Okay,
people either vote for or against that motion, right?
That's interesting, though. If we vote, let's say the motion is to support it and say it's 3-2 one way or the other, let's say it's 3-2 against or any amount against, does that mean we don't support? It doesn't leave the third rail. I don't know how to do
If I
that.
just make a motion, and I'm not making a motion, but if I make a motion to vote on this, a vote on taking an opinion or
taking a position.
taking a
motion
position
doesn't-
on this.
Making a motion doesn't mean you support it. You're just putting it out for vote.
I know, but the way the motion is crafted depends. So what Travis is suggesting is that the motion, rather than being a motion to support, would be a motion to take a position. And then if we decide to take a position, then you decide on which position it's going to be.
Got it. I think that's a good way.
Steps.
Go ahead, Mr.
Just kind of, I make a motion that we would determine, however, take a position on Article 10 for the town warrant.
Second. So an I means you vote to take a
To
position.
take a
correct.
position and they would,
Okay. Yep.
All right.
just talked about it, but any other?
Okay,
Right, well, we've got a motion and
we got a
it's been
motion and we have a
seconded.
second, right?
Christine did have her hand up.
Come up to the, yeah.
Christina Crisotolopoulos, co-chair of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. My question is, would you still support putting it on the spring town meeting? And does that affect, I mean, it's sort of out of our hands that it's a citizen's petition, moving it up to the fall, but would you still support putting it on the spring? And if so, yes, the timeline's pushed up, but if you would be supportive of putting it on the spring, then maybe, given the fact that there's 6 months before implementation, that some of the questions would be ironed out. You know, the assumption is that some of the questions would be ironed out in those 6 months. And so maybe taking into consideration the fact that the timing is not ideal, but that's where we are right now. sort of a roundabout question, sorry. but
Well, in 6 months from now, there will be some track record and that we can look at that is not available now because there are not very many. There's like 2 communities that have had it for more than 6 months, and all the rest of them are starting in January. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think I could guarantee that I would that I would say, yeah, we would do it. It would depend upon what we've learned between now and then.
Well, and you bring up a good point that, shooting at the king and missing, right? So Nathan talked about town clerk vote 6 years ago. Had it been brought up like the next year or half year, it would go down again because it just went down, right? So we've had to wait now all this cycle to be ready to maybe propose that thing again. When I was on FinCom, we voted 2 years in a row about fields and we got shot down twice because we overreached. So my concern is that, and Barney sort of alluded to too, because the citizens rush, we decided to wait because we thought all these issues, let's just wait, which I think was the prudent thing because of all those variables. The citizen says, oh no, we're going to go right away. Okay. But the risk is it fails and we won't be ready at spring. Why would you bring it up 6 months after it was shot down? You have to wait now for a while for it to digest and then bring it up. So I don't know what will happen in the meeting, obviously, but if it goes down, they will have actually sub-optimized the outcome they wanted because they rushed it. And that's all I could say about it.
But if you generally support it, I mean, I understand that there's questions, but if you generally support it, are you willing to, in effect, if you don't support it now, but you generally support the theory, are you willing to, in effect, shoot it down? Is sort of a rhetorical question, but I just felt the need to sort of put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's making the presentation on this at town meeting?
not us.
Somebody from the group submitted the petition?
We don't really have a point person
Oh, maybe
the-
Wayne knows.
from the group.
I have not gotten a definitive answer yet. The petition had 2 designated contact people, which are Debbie Bentley and John Kaufman. So it's really up to the petitioners. I believe that they were, that Debbie did ask me, since she is not a citizen, she asked me whether it would be okay for her to make the presentation, which it would be. And also she asked if Glenn could be used as part of the presentation to provide technical information on behalf of the committee. And I said, that's up to Glenn to decide, but, and I didn't get an answer back because she was traveling. So that's what I know as of now, but it is up to the petitioners. It is up to the petitioners to actually make a motion. It is up to the petitioners to make a presentation. It is not your responsibility. Ryan and I both are helpful in trying to facilitate so that citizens can get things done. But at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to decide what they want to do.
So I guess I'm coming to the reluctant conclusion that I think we should hold off as a select board taking a position on this for this fall town meeting. And I would like it if we were comfortable as a select board when the town moderator asks if any other boards taking positions on this, for us to be able to say, no, we chose not to take a position on it because of the timing, to be able to have say something publicly about why we didn't take a position on it.
We could also say why we took the particular position we did take, right?
if we voted
We could
one
take
way
a
or the
position
other.
And then
Yes.
explain that position.
That's
and
true.
get to the same place.
That's true.
Yeah, except that
We're still doing
I
our
think-
duty as a select board of making the
I
decision.
suspect that our position is going to be split and won't be unanimous, and then it'll be more difficult to explain.
We have a motion on the table.
We have a motion on the table, yes.
Which is to take a
Decide to
position.
take a position or not. I know,
Okay.
but this is helpful in that discussion.
Okay, so it's been seconded. Is there any more discussion about whether we should take a position or should we go ahead and vote?
Reminder, a yes vote is to take a position, which means we then have
Correct.
to roll to the position.
Right.
Okay.
Aye. Nay.
You don't want to take a position? Okay, don't.
Oh, wait, Barney's are we doing
Yeah,
this? in-
that's all right.
No, it's just,
Go ahead, Barney.
I was doing the ayes.
Oh, no, nay.
Aye.
And I'm a nay.
All right, so we're not taking a position. 3-2. Is that right?
Correct.
That's how you interpret that? Okay.
Alright, so the select board's not taking a position.
Yeah. Are people comfortable though with us, with having some kind of a statement?
I think that's
Okay,
very easy.
we can review that at our next meeting.
Nominate Barney.
I'm happy to make it, but I,
You said it. a good
Yeah,
way.
I'm,
okay,
Are you the rep to the ESC?
the liaison.
All
Yeah.
the more-
Yeah.
All the more.
okay. All right, committee and employee appointment policies, part 1.
Is, Aubrey, are you on the call?
Hey Barney, yes, I'm the select board tonight, just to throw you off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, so Aubrey and I worked on this together. And if you look at the version that's in your packet, it's what we've seen before.
Mhm.
But the highlighted sections, are, proposed, changes or additions. And so I hope everybody has looked at this. We've had it in front of us a couple of times. And if we're comfortable with this, just going to the sections that have been highlighted, then I think that would be a efficient way to do this unless other folks want to go back over the whole content.
No.
Aubrey, do you want to walk us through then the highlighted section, the first of which is right about the reappointment of board members. And the part we added was specific to the executive assistant.
Sure.
Jen's Position. Thank you.
Yeah, so as Jen has left as well, and looking at my position, it makes more sense for the executive assistant who's already managing the appointment process to also be that main point of contact for managing appointments and reappointments. So what we recommend is that anybody who is interested in volunteering, submit a letter of interest to the executive assistant, who will reach out to the board that they're interested in, CC myself. And another thing we might also like to add is the liaison. So one of you would also be part of that. So you can also kind of monitor the process and follow up if you need to, in case for some reason the board doesn't respond, or just to get some rationale behind that. And so with that, we can make sure that any letters of interest are getting moved forward. We can check in and follow up. And so right now I'm acting as that now that Jen's away, and so far it's worked really well. And so I think that will be a good way to do that. And that the executive assistant will work with me on publicizing any openings. So we'll try to streamline that as well. So we're trying to make sure that all of the board vacancies have an even platform for advertising anything and submitting letters of interest.
So I just want to stop you there because I have a question about the definition of an opening. It seems to me that the way we define an opening is if there's somebody in the slot who doesn't want to be reappointed, shouldn't the openings be all the expired slots and the people that are in the current, thing, just like an elected official, so to speak, I have to re-up every 3 years. My slot. I understand, but I'm just saying the same thing should probably, we would get more circulation in the offices or in the appointments if all this, the people that are in them also have to reapply. Why,
Only one
or we should have some term limits or
Yeah.
consider term limits.
difficulty filling the slots.
Yeah,
as it is.
exactly. We have unfilled slots.
I wouldn't do that.
I mean, what, that would really, I mean, you're not really asking them to reapply, it just, I think one of the things that, I think it was Jen did it, was reached out to everybody and asked them if they were still interested in being on the board. We could just ask them, we could just ask them, could you send a letter of interest so that the board knows that you're really interested? Not counting an application.
I just don't think the expectation should be that you're automatically reappointed because you are there already. That's my major.
Right. Well,
concern.
that's on us, right? Because we're the ones that appoint.
Exactly. Well, but it's me. First of all, this is how we've been doing business for so long that now that is sort of the thing, but we don't codify it by saying, it's not automatic. You need to sort of.
There's an incredibly small number of committees that are oversubscribed.
That might be, but then there might be some others that are not. Okay, let me put it to you this way. Yeah, you might not look for another volunteer because there's seemingly no openings.
I will say I've not spoken to a lot of people, but two folks over the course of the last couple of years who have said that it's hard to break in to a committee that's got a team of people and they want to continue. So I think it is worth maybe reflecting on this a little bit, whether we want to add, if your term is expired, that is an opening that you then are, you're one of the people that then is asking to be reappointed. Yeah, but it's sort of done in a more formal.
Maybe you should address the stuff in red there and then come back to this because you are building a certain amount of potential for conflict. In other words, inviting more people and now the incumbent has to fight for his or her spot and breaking up a team that may be working, or are we doing our job, as I think somebody mentioned, and making sure that the committees are effective? So, and then the number two here, people who are not particularly suited.
Oh, yeah. So
I'd like to understand where we are on those things. and
yeah.
come back.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so for number one, I mean, I know in the past we've had more than one person interested in a role, and we interviewed them, and we decided, and we had to say no to some people, but we had everybody who was interested come in. Some people, I think in one case, one person wasn't able to come, but still wrote a letter. But it could be that component of it is outsourced, to another group or to Ryan or Ryan's team or something to make a recommendation to us. But in the past, we absolutely have interviewed people and selected a candidate.
And you're 100% right. And we're adding a layer, which is that the incumbent, in those situations, I'm willing to guess that in almost all cases, they're new people, like 3 people for 2 slots or 2 people for 1 slot. But now you add the incumbent who also has to justify.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
that's what
Which is, it's okay, that's the world, but it is adding a little extra.
it's kind of like what we go through with our liaison assignments, right? We all, it's like some people really want to be on a particular one. We have to really take a close look at it. And
The main complaint we get, and it's not a lot of people, 2, 3, 4 in my time here, I haven't been here that long, is that the board is given a name for a vacancy that may or may not have been known. So this person is now filling this slot. And I don't think there's any ill intention to it. It's this idea that you need to.
We'll clean that one up. This addresses that, right? So
But that is,
I'm all for that. I think clarity on this process is great. I'm just worried. I'm always worried about unintended consequences. It's
Yeah.
fine to say, oh, we should, but you get in the real situation where the incumbent feels like she's been doing a good job. And now she's like in a job interview, like she's got to fight for a job.
Yeah.
In our climate of just trying to get people to volunteer, I'm not on board with that. That's all.
Mhm.
Ryan, did you have more to say on that? I'm sorry, I thought you were had it.
It was just that it's clear that this position exists and would someone else like to volunteer, even if you have a name, would help
Yes.
alleviate some of the complaints about the process.
What do you mean, even if you have a name?
So
I mean, even if there's
X
somebody,
person
the
on this
committee,
please, we recommend appoint them. That there was no chance to publicize that there was even a
Right.
vacancy is
Right.
the main.
so that's, yeah, that's addressed in here. I guess the question is, do you say there's a vacancy if you're asking people whose term is up, to be reappointed?
Kind of giving them right of first refusal,
Right,
and we're deciding. if there's-
right, right.
I think we would need to stop that.
Well, that's.
We would need to
that's
what,
Kate's
Nathan?
saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what Kate's saying.
We have vacancies coming up. These are the vacancies that we have. Who's interested in it?
Yeah,
And if the incumbent wants to do it again, great.
Let us know.
Let us know.
But
But
it's our, they'll be the only person.
Okay. All right.
But we haven't closed the door on anybody.
That's what I'm
Correct.
saying.
yeah,
Like,
Try it.
it's closed.
Try it. There'll be some uncomfortable moments, I guarantee you. But let's.
yeah. Well, and then the question is, if you look at this section that we're on, sorry, where you were. So number one question, how do we handle a situation where there are more people interested than there are slots? Where there are people who are not particularly suited to serve on the new group, or the committee requests that somebody not be appointed? Aubrey and I came up with an idea here. Aubrey, maybe you want to speak to your thought about it, that it really wasn't appropriate for a staff person to be making the recommendation to the select board, or at least not as the assistant town administrator. It didn't seem to be appropriate.
Sure, and I related it to just like with an elected position, I absolutely cannot comment on that. So I think that it just doesn't make sense for me to be part of that selection process. When it comes to HR with staff, that makes sense. But with volunteers, I think that should just continue to be a town process. And I should not have a weight on that, especially when I'm not on these boards and committees. So I think that that's where I kind of err caution on having me be part of that process.
So this is just one idea where you could have, and maybe it's done every year when we do the election of officers for the select board, that people also, you could have 2 select board members that sign up to be the working group with the town administrators, only in the case of, if you have more than, you've publicized it and you have more people than there are slots. There's a small group that does some of the background conversation and then comes forward with a recommendation. The part of this that I think is that I'm sensitive to is sort of in public, having us as a group of 5 sort of saying why somebody should be in this position and somebody else should not. And so having a smaller representative group of the select board do that work out of the public eye, in a sense, right? By checking in with the individuals and checking in with the chair of the committee, et cetera, and then come forward with a recommendation about who they would suggest be appointed. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I just want, that's.
So I'm a little confused because.
Yeah.
What I think I hear Kate and Nathan saying is, if somebody's term is up, you will publicly advertise that is open.
Mhm.
You saying after that you do this vetting, or you do the vetting?
Yeah, if in the situation, let's say where after you've done what you described, and then you have, 3 people for 2 slots, we could do what Nathan was saying, which is those 3 come before the board and you somehow have a interview process. But then our discussion has to be you know, we have to publicly discuss why one person over another. And maybe that is what we want to do, but I was thinking, I don't know if that's the right way to do it in terms of doing all that and instead having a smaller group.
Yeah, but see now,
Yeah.
this is exactly why, right now, the informal and sort of backdoor process is if you're on the committee and you get a right of first refusal and you say, I would like to continue to serve, then Jen puts you back on the list.
Right.
You know,
Right.
only if there's an opening, a true,
Right.
somebody doesn't want to
Vacancy,
serve, there's a
right.
vacancy, we advertise for people. So if you're going to go the other way, I think you got to go full transparency and have the interview. You can't have a halfway where
Mhm.
you let people go in, but by the way, back behind the scenes, whatever you're saying, it seemed like we were dropping some names or not putting forward some names. I think you go one way or the other, right? So if we're going to go to the incumbents have no higher standing than that, then okay, then we interview. If there's more than the slots, we do what Nathan said. We have an interview and we make an assessment.
And then does the committee itself,
We could have
we've had that, well, no, I meant the committee that has the openings. We've had in this process that the committee typically is recommending somebody be appointed. So would we still include that as part of the process, that we would like the committee's recommendation, or is this done strictly through this centralized process and the committee doesn't weigh in on who's indicated their interest?
So, I mean, I think it's all about transparency, but I think we could get there without putting people out in public, right? So we could, I'm interested in Ryan's thought, but we could create a working group. I don't know what it consists of, but a working group who is responsible for the volunteer positions on all of the committees, right? And so that group is doing the posting, tracking which ones are coming available, getting it posted, getting it out there, receiving everything, making sure that we're getting letters from people that they want. And then for each committee, you know, talking to the people with somebody from the committee, and decide, you know, and then presenting it. But if there's more than one person for a role, I think that the select board should get a list of the people who applied for it, and not a reason why somebody wasn't selected, but the reason why this particular person was selected. And that would give the transparency around, okay, there were 5 people who wanted this one role. You know, we interviewed them all and we're recommending this person for these reasons.
I'm also looking for a process that would then also be in a position to look at the 4 remaining people that didn't get chosen for that particular slot and say, you know, but we also have slots here, 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 and there. Would you be interested in any of those? And we think that you would be a good fit. I mean, I think we're missing a lot of opportunities for.
And this
getting-
committee could do that. This working
Yes.
group, this
Whatever you want to,
could do this. So, you know, trying to basically recruiting
basically.
and helping vet and presenting somebody for us. Now, I have no idea who's on that committee, but I do think that it's important that for each, you know, for a role that's like, if it's a historical commission role, the historical commission has to have a say in what's going on there, because they're trying to, you know, we're far removed from what might be going on there. So we may, you know, that group could select somebody that's not bringing the skill that they particularly need right then. And so, you know, they need to have some say into what skills are being brought in. I think, I guess.
Although that might,
Proposal here is a good one.
yeah. I was just thinking though, maybe when you put out the notice that about the vacancies, you have more specifics about what skills the committee is looking for, you know, on the front end.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that those are the people who are going to apply. And so just making sure that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think just the administration, the logistics, the record keeping could be lodged with the executive assistant.
Yeah, that's fine.
Rather than a group of people that are doing that. And then if it makes sense, I mean, you should comment on this, Ryan, to have a small working group that's reviewing and if there are openings and how many people are interested in,
I don't-
making a recommendation.
I don't think it should be two select board members.
I don't think so either.
Maybe there,
It has to be a public entity. It can't be as a working group.
Oh, it has to be a public entity, okay?
So one thing so if you approve a process, one thing that we can make clear to people is you will be, if there's more than two people, hey, this is going to be a public thing. It doesn't have to be a contentious public thing, but it has to be
Mhm.
public. I do think that would be rare, given
Yeah,
volunteer climate, but
right.
I think it'd be rare as well. But I also don't think it should be two select board members because if one of those two select board members just talks to another one, you've just broken up the meeting law.
if you had an actual subcommittee, you could do a lot of this vetting work, but it would have to be a public meeting.
Mhm.
It would have to be a true subcommittee, like a nominating committee or something.
Yeah.
It strikes me as a lot of additional work for the select board when we have, if we're going to do it during meeting times, we already,
Yeah, it wouldn't be, no, it would have to be
in addition to.
in addition, outside of meeting times.
I think it's one select board member, if that, and a group of other people.
Could be, yeah.
I mean, they're the recruiting arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
It's a new committee we're setting up.
We're trying to eliminate committees. We have more committees than we.
Is the current process broken? Because you're really adding a lot of
It is.
layers to this.
Well, I don't know. No, the current process, in my opinion, is definitely broken. And one of our goals is to get more engagement in town. And so I think we need to be looking for ways to get more engagement in town. And this is one of the arms of that. So master plan goal and one of our goals.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I think I'm not sure broken is the right word, but where we could have improvements is in communicating what roles are available, right? I think that's where we really could improve, and just in managing it a lot better. You know, we stumble over it every single summer when we're trying to appoint people. I think that's the part that could really use a lot of a lot of improvement. I think we are so incredibly lucky that we have amazing volunteers who spend a lot of time. I do think that there's untapped potential though.
I agree. Right.
Well, shall we,
This was intentionally a part one. I
This
knew
is
wasn't
part
gonna get
one.
there, so.
We need to make, I would have liked to have finished it, but I don't see that we're going to do that.
are we, just to maybe give some direction to Aubrey and myself to rewrite something, is the sense of the board that we should have a subcommittee that is the sort of outreach and clearinghouse for volunteers?
Yeah, this,
That would be a
I
separate,
think you guys got to write it up as a procedure and then.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is there general support for
Sounds
that
like,
among this?
Yes, so.
yeah. So I would say, from what I've heard, that people like this one idea that you've already drawn up, that you want to build on that.
The TA creates a working group, but instead we're calling it an actual sub.
Whatever you call it, and how many, yeah,
Meeting law.
right.
Okay.
That's where I think you start.
But to move things forward, I think the first section that's highlighted, I think that looks good.
The executive assistant.
It's the next section.
But I think you have to add, it sounds like the feeling of the board is we should add in that first section process that a vacancy is considered
Right.
end of a term.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
And that,
definitely.
and that we don't go to, I don't know if it's written here, but I mean, there's somewhere I read where they go back to the incumbents. We're not gonna do that anymore. We're gonna just
Right.
signal to everybody that if they're interested, they go through, they get in the hopper.
Yeah.
Regardless of who they are.
Regardless.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Great.
Aubrey, any last things you want to say or ask about?
No, this is really helpful. I really appreciate it. It's nice to have this process ready to go.
Doke. Great. Just
Town
wanna-
administrator.
Madam
sorry.
Chair, I
Yes.
just want to say that you've got to
Leave in
leave
5
a little bit
minutes.
before 10. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I have to get my husband at the airport. His flight got changed, so thank
I'll
you.
tell you, those pesky husbands.
It's really
Okay.
uncommitted, Barney.
Yes. All right, town administrator report. That has.
So we're working on the microphones, as I've communicated to the board. I'm bringing in microphones to test to make sure that it's a good solution because they are expensive. We will be using PEG money for this because we think it has good functionality. However, we're going to test it. So it's going to be a month or so before we see that come to fruition. Also, the functionality in the Heald and Parlin rooms, I'm going to Bill Ricca. They have some of the technology that we're looking at. So I just want to test that out too. So these changes are coming and they'll happen sooner rather than later, but not tomorrow. The new executive assistant process, we concluded that this week. Interviewing an internal candidate, we are not ready to announce because of the timing of the meeting. So one of the things I want to bring quickly to the board is this boards and committees and employees appointment process. The employees still also need some vetting. So one of the issues that we have with hiring is now we have to wait until the next meeting. And that means if it's an internal candidate, we can't advertise the position that was just open, or we can. So we just need some more clarity that we don't want to seem like the person was selected before they were appointed, and it's difficult to send offer letters contingent on your vote. So just a better understanding of what level to hire and those processes would help us smooth out some of this HR function. And I can get into more detail if you want or not. We are assisting the Board of Health with hiring their health assistant and are looking at now hiring a temporary hire to help during a busy inspection season for Linda. And in anticipation of hiring a full assistant, we did not have a good result with the first round of candidates, so it's going to take a little longer than we thought. We're working through a recommendation for you on the assistant treasurer collector that might include a small restructure of the finance department that will be coming to you at your next meeting. And then we are advertising and hiring DPW heavy equipment operators. We have a lot of internal promotions to include the last one, Shane, moving to mechanics. So we need more heavy equipment operators. In your packet, you have a summary of the deck house assessment working group findings. None of these are a surprise. They've been communicated to you through the process and a couple of times. What I'm recommending to you now is you have a joint meeting with the Board of Assessors to discuss these findings. I think it would be a rich conversation. I also think you'll see, and the town will see, that the Board of Assessors is already working on a lot of these recommendations. And much like the master plan, many of them are moving forward despite not having this joint meeting. But it would be good to communicate that and get select board input to the other elected board in town looking at this function. You met Athena, she's great.
Is Athena also the name of the statue in the roundabout? No.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was Lady Liberty.
I thought that was Liberty as well.
Yeah.
Jake, our management intern, starts this week. He is going to regret working for Julie and I. Very busy. Greeno Barn, we've had several, I'm going to try and concisely summarize where we're at. So because of state procurement law and the way you have to build the construction projects, and the fact that deconstruction really hasn't been addressed by state procurement as recognized by many town officials, this is something that'll be sorted out in the next few years, but it hasn't now. So what we're looking at is setting a standard for what we can recycle, reuse, or rehabilitate in the barn. We can't dictate through an RFP exactly what they can maintain, for example, one contractor looked at the barn and said, "Oh, I would love to take the middle and put it somewhere else," which would be a huge win for the town, for the world, but doesn't want anything to do with the wings. We can't piece that up or tell him that he has to do X, Y, or Z in the wings. So the overall metric will be met or not by these contractors, and then it'll come down to price, which it always does with procurement. So it's just a small nuance, and it's a problem. We're gonna come up with a creative solution, I think, and have a good result here, but it'll be articulated to you in detail once we are finalized with our recommendation. I just want folks to know why we haven't come with a final recommendation. We're working through it and trying to actually set a state standard here. But the result will be good. The third graders in town voted on this year's dog tag, and they picked the bone overwhelmingly. Peggy made a great joke, said it was in no need of a recount. And the students got a good fun civics lesson, and we revamped this program through the town clerk's office, and we think it went great. Jim, without prompting during the last big surprise storm, initiated a message to the mosquito and others opening up the DPW for brush collection that was caused by the storm. I thought that was a great thing for him to do and to think about. So this will be open through October 15th, and then the regular collection of brush will start in December. So if you have storm-related brush and you want to drop it off, you can. I submitted Aubrey and I's executive professional development plan to you. This is required by my contract, so just looking to make sure there's no issues. This is all within the current budget. I put together, as I told you last time, a DPU working group to talk about some of the state regulation changes at the DPW, the Department of Public Utilities. We have some super volunteers, Bob and Glenn, who assembled a very strong response document. I understand 28% of the memo they put together, but we feel that that this group is representing the town in our comments to the regulation changes that are being made. There's no actual changes yet. These are just comments that were requested. So I am requesting that the board support this working group's letter of recommendation and response to send to the DPU and authorize Kate to sign it. And that is looking for a motion.
Yes, can we just do that motion real quick before Barney leaves?
Sure.
So I need a motion to authorize the select board chair.
I move to authorize the select board chair to sign a letter addressed to the Department of Public Utilities detailing the town of Carlisle's response to the DPU's proposed municipal aggregation regulation changes as prepared by the town administrator's CCA working group and included in tonight's packet.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those,
Good work. It's very, I
Yeah,
want to
boy.
say, it's very detailed, way more than I can absorb, but
yeah,
a lot of work went into
Yeah.
that. So
it's an
Thank you.
excellent letter.
fortunately,
Who did it? Bob and
Bob said
Glenn?
he's like, I quickly whipped this up for you. I'm like, come on, Bob.
Yeah, Bob Zog.
Talk about point by point. Yeah, okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Before Barney leaves, do you need us to vote to approve the training?
The what?
It-
Oh, the trainee?
The professional development.
Professional.
Oh.
Well, it says that we're obligated to review and approve.
Oh, no, there you go.
Okay,
Is that a vote, or do we
I
just
think
say?
you could do that as part of my evaluation. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
okay.
Part of my goals.
Great.
All right, some quick information or upcoming decisions. So we are looking to schedule, and we have intentionally punted it because of other pressing matters, but talk about town hall hours, what constitutes public hours so that we can solidify schedules for employees and tie that to personnel policies. And you have a memo from us recommending town hall hour changes. I'm also recommending to this board that we add 5 hours to the town planner's current job description to accomplish many of the sustainability goals. We have had some employee restructuring, and we have some sustainability money that would accomplish this without any impact really to the budget. That will be coming to you for a decision with other staff changes as alluded to in the HR section of this report. Going to present a financial forecast model. This will be the operating side of the budget. It'll be a simple forecast that demonstrates trends in current costs, how that relates to revenue, and what you would need to do to maintain that 2.5% to 3% increase on taxes. That seems to be a benchmark. The Financial policies and select board policies, we're moving through these. There's a lot of them. It's a cumbersome task. The most important ones are the financial policies. You're going to get a wave of these in November and December, and it's important that we work through them. Also, a lot of the select board policies are more than 20, 30 years old, and we just need to look at them and update them. They don't all need major changes, just revision. And finally, I met one-on-one with more than a dozen employees, and we'll continue to meet with them and discuss their goals. We've revised many of the goals. So I'm going to put together a quick sheet of the highlights of people's goals so you can see the goals making process. This went all the way down to every employee level and has been articulated as part of the evaluation process, which you will also see from Aubrey. And then I presented a bunch of statistics to you, but just wanted to thank the public safety officials for their work on the 8th. It's inspired us to do even more planning drills. We're going to do some response drills and some emergency response planning. We were working on it, but it's just, again, reminded us that we need to be proactive with this. So very appreciative of the staff and their willingness to jump into this extra work. I have put some dates of interest on this report, attached the Tech House Working Group recommendations, professional development request, DPU letter, and the agenda I will put on the screen for the next meeting.
We're having the meeting 3 times on October 24th, huh?
What's that?
Which is the upcoming select board meeting.
Oh, was it a post? Is it pasting or yeah?
Madam Chair, I think we need
Yes.
to add in there, our discussion tonight about the town clerk and maybe put some time in there for, discussion of that or input.
That's the
from
fall town meeting discussion.
Okay,
That's the first thing on the agenda.
right.
Okay,
I
so-
don't know if you wanted a bullet point.
Oh,
or
well,
just
we
to be
can, okay,
clear.
you want a bullet point, the
It's
town clerk,
clear
it's
that-
really just the town clerk. That's the only one, because we took no position on the other, so it's only that.
Correct.
So Ryan, or maybe it's Kate, we got 2 weeks, if I recall correctly. So 2 weeks from tonight, we're meeting with your evaluation, which means it's the compilation. So
Right.
can you work us backwards? What's our
I was
window
gonna
of?
say,
Yeah, that's going to have to be pushed.
I think we're gonna have to push it, because we haven't even had Ryan's self-eval yet, and none of us have talked to him, so I think that's gonna go to after town meeting, but I wouldn't, it would be nice if we don't push it any further after that, so. And we, yeah. And when are the assessors were gonna be coming out with the new assessments, and I know they're gonna do a little different thing. It would be nice if we could meet with them before they come out with their assessments. So we'll have to find out when that's happening.
So is the financial forecast, it's the operating budget side?
Yes.
And it'll be similar, like a presentation? kind of thing? Okay, got it.
It's a lot more simple.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Is that also going to be a joint meeting with FinCom?
They've been invited, yep.
Great.
All right. It was made that motion, so we need a motion to approve the select board meeting
I
minutes.
don't see any minutes.
I didn't see any minutes either. We didn't get any minutes in the,
There's no minutes.
okay, that's left over from,
The only thing that's left
Another-
is the cemetery deed.
we,
You signed it.
let's
so
get
we
that
better
done.
vote it.
All right.
I move that the select board vote to transfer land in the public burial ground at Green Cemetery as follows. Deed 809, described as Section D, Lot 401, Grave 1, to Sarah Young of Warwick, Rhode Island.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay, is it Warwick or Warwick?
Does it matter?
It's Warwick. Warwick.
Okay. Probably be corrected on the deed. However,